Welcome to Pillow Tale Studio, where whispers of mystery meet gentle journeys of the mind. Today, let the soft glow of our stories soothe your thoughts and guide you to a world where every word is a step closer to peaceful slumber. As the stars begin to shimmer, we invite you to close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift away with us into a tale where curiosity dances with calm. Are you ready? Let's begin. Story 1: Ancient Technology. The Forbidden Machines. Dr. Evelyn Hunter, a brilliant historian and archaeologist, stood before the crumbling walls of the ancient library in Alexandria, her heart racing. The dusty scent of centuries-old parchment filled the air, and the soft hum of the hidden gears beneath the stones seemed to echo through the chamber. She had spent years chasing down whispers of forgotten knowledge, and now, at last, she had found it, the missing link that could rewrite history. For centuries, the existence of an advanced technology that predates any known civilization had been dismissed as mere myth. But Evelyn had always believed there was something more, something hidden beneath layers of time, waiting to be uncovered. As she brushed away the cobwebs and carefully examined the intricate carvings on the stone, a thrill of excitement coursed through her veins. These markings were not just symbols of an ancient language, they were blueprints. A sudden creak interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see her assistant, Nathaniel, standing at the entrance, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Dr. Hunter," he began, his voice hushed. "Are you sure about this? You've been working on this theory for years, but what if it's all just a trick?" Evelyn's lips curled into a faint smile. "I've always trusted in the evidence, Nathaniel. And this is real. This could change everything." She knelt down, examining the symbols more closely. They depicted a machine, an enormous contraption with strange geometric shapes and patterns that defied the known principles of engineering. The design was unlike anything she had ever seen, a hybrid of technology and something far more alien. There were no markings that could explain its purpose, but the engravings hinted at a power source that transcended anything in the modern world. "I believe this was meant to be activated," Evelyn whispered, tracing the lines of the drawing with her fingers. "But the mechanism is lost to time. We need to find the key." Nathaniel looked uneasy. "And where do we start looking for it?" Evelyn rose to her feet, her eyes alight with determination. "There are rumors, whispers of a hidden location deep within the mountains of Tibet, where a secret order has guarded the last pieces of this technology for centuries. If we can find the entrance, we may be able to unlock the machine's true power." The adventure was set into motion. As they journeyed through the heart of Tibet, Evelyn and Nathaniel found themselves facing not only treacherous terrain, but also the shadow of a secret society, an ancient brotherhood that had protected the forbidden machines for millennia. The closer they got to the hidden temple, the more obstacles seemed to appear, each one designed to test their resolve. Strange occurrences surrounded them, cryptic symbols etched into the rocks, whispers on the wind, and dreams of a city beyond the stars. Eventually, they reached the temple, a sprawling structure built into the side of a mountain, its walls carved with the same strange symbols Evelyn had seen in Alexandria. It was here, deep within the temple's inner sanctum, that the final clue lay hidden. In the dim light of their lanterns, Evelyn and Nathaniel navigated the labyrinthine passages of the temple, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Every corner seemed to hold another secret, another riddle waiting to be solved. But time was running out. The ancient order knew they were coming, and every passing moment brought them closer to a dangerous confrontation. At last, they reached a massive chamber. In the center of the room stood the machine, a towering structure of metal, crystal, and unknown alloys. It hummed with a strange energy, as if it were alive, waiting to be awakened. The machine's design was far beyond anything created by human hands. It had elements of both ancient and futuristic technologies, interwoven in a way that defied explanation. This is it," Evelyn said, her voice barely a whisper. Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Not so fast. She spun around to see a figure emerging from the shadows. A man cloaked in black, his eyes hidden behind a mask. He was no ordinary treasure hunter or archaeologist. He was a member of the Secret Order, sworn to protect the ancient technology from those who sought to misuse it. You don't understand what you're dealing with, the figure warned. The power contained within this machine is beyond anything humanity can control. It was designed to change the course of history, but it was also designed to destroy those who try to harness it. Evelyn stepped forward, her heart racing. I don't want to destroy anything. I want to understand it. I want to bring knowledge to the world. The figure laughed darkly. Knowledge? You think knowledge is all it takes? This machine doesn't just record history, it alters it. It can undo entire civilizations, erase them from existence. It was created to be a weapon, not a tool for progress. As Evelyn's mind raced, she realized the truth of his words. The machine wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a force capable of unimaginable destruction. But was it too late to stop the activation? Before she could answer, Nathaniel stepped forward. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands. We have to take control of it, before anyone else does. The final battle for the machine's secret had begun. The tension in the chamber thickened as the figure in black approached the machine. His eyes locked onto Evelyn and Nathaniel. His presence seemed to pulse with an ancient authority, and the air grew colder with every passing second. You're too late, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The Order has kept this technology hidden for millennia for a reason. You too are now part of the story that must be erased. Evelyn could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her. This was no longer about discovery. It was about survival. The machine in front of her, now humming with a low, almost imperceptible vibration, seemed to sense their presence. The lights flickered, casting long shadows across the stone walls. The ancient, forbidden technology was waking, and Evelyn knew there was no turning back. We don't want to erase history, Evelyn said firmly, stepping forward. We want to learn from it. We can control it. I know we can. The figure shook his head, pulling a slender, gleaming dagger from beneath his cloak. The weapon was ancient, its surface etched with the same symbols that adorned the machine. You do not understand the cost of unlocking this power. If you attempt to activate it, it will not just rewrite history, it will erase it. It will break the fabric of reality itself. Nathaniel, whose hands had been trembling in anticipation, now stepped beside Evelyn. We have no choice. We can't let you use it for whatever dark purpose you intend. The knowledge it holds must be shared with the world. The figure's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, with a swift motion, he hurled the dagger at Nathaniel. Evelyn gasped, but in that moment of confusion, Nathaniel moved with surprising agility, dodging the blade just in time. It clattered against the stone floor, skittering into the shadows. Evelyn didn't hesitate. Now, she shouted, motioning to Nathaniel to activate the machine. The two of them rushed to the machine's core, where a glowing crystal was encased in a cage of metallic arms. Evelyn's heart raced as she studied the symbols surrounding the crystal. She could feel the pulse of ancient energy flowing through the air, but the answers were just out of reach. Give it to me, the masked figure commanded, moving toward them with alarming speed. He had clearly underestimated their resolve, and now he was desperate to stop them. Nathaniel reached into his bag, pulling out a set of ancient tools they had discovered during their journey. A set of keys made of jade and obsidian. These had been the final clue Evelyn had pieced together from the library in Alexandria. The machine wasn't just activated by physical force. It required a specific sequence, one that could only be unlocked with these ancient keys. The figure lunged at them, but before he could reach them, the ground beneath their feet trembled. A low rumble echoed through the chamber as the machine's core began to glow brighter, the crystal reacting to the keys in Evelyn's hand. The walls seemed to shift and warp, as if the very space around them was distorting, bending to the will of the machine. Stop! The masked figure screamed, his voice full of panic. Evelyn placed the final key into the machine's slot, and the room exploded with blinding light. Time seemed to slow as the crystal pulsed and hummed, sending waves of energy through the chamber. The machine whirred to life, and Evelyn felt an overwhelming sensation of being connected to something vast, something beyond her understanding. Images of lost civilizations, Forgotten technologies and alien landscapes flooded her mind. She saw the rise and fall of empires, the creation of impossible machines, and the hidden hands of those who had guided humanity's development from the shadows. It was all there, waiting to be understood, but the energy was too much. The overload caused the entire chamber to shake violently, the walls cracking as if the ancient structure could no longer contain the force that had been unleashed. "Get out!" Nathaniel yelled, grabbing Evelyn's arm. "We have to leave now, before it destroys everything." As the chamber began to collapse around them, Evelyn hesitated for only a moment, taking one last look at the machine. They had activated it, but the knowledge it held was overwhelming. It wasn't just the past they were witnessing, it was the future, too, and the consequences of meddling with such power were unclear. Together, they ran, narrowly avoiding falling debris and the powerful waves of energy emanating from the machine. Behind them, the once sturdy walls began to crumble, collapsing under the weight of what they had unlocked. Outside, the air was thick with dust, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Evelyn and Nathaniel found refuge in a nearby cave, where they could watch from a safe distance as the temple sank into the earth. The forbidden machines, now activated, were no longer just relics of the past. They were a living force, and their true purpose was yet to be revealed. But as Evelyn sat down, her mind racing, she couldn't help but wonder, what had they unleashed? And was humanity truly ready for the power that lay ahead? The ground shook beneath their feet as they crouched in the cave, watching the destruction unfold. The ancient temple had sunk into the earth, swallowed by the very forces it had once controlled. The bright glow of the machine had dimmed, leaving behind an eerie silence that only seemed to amplify the urgency of the moment. Evelyn's mind was racing. What had they unleashed? What had they seen in that brief moment of contact with the machine's power? The knowledge that flooded her consciousness felt alien, almost too vast to comprehend. It was as if the machine had connected her to an ancient intelligence, one that had existed long before human civilization. Nathaniel, breathing heavily from their escape, looked at her with concern. "Evelyn, what exactly did we just activate? That was beyond anything we could have imagined." Evelyn shook her head, her thoughts still swirling. "I don't know, but whatever it wasn't just technology. It was something more, something ancient. I think it was a weapon, but also something meant to keep us from understanding it fully." They sat in the cave for a long while, the only sound the distant rumble of the earth, as if the very planet itself was unsettled by the force they had unleashed. Eventually, Evelyn stood up, brushing the dirt and dust from her clothes. She was a scholar, a seeker of truth, but now she wasn't sure whether the truth she had uncovered was one humanity was prepared to handle. "We have to go back," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her head. "There's more to this, Nathaniel. We only scratched the surface. We need to learn what we triggered." Nathaniel looked uncertain. "Back? To the temple? It's gone, Evelyn. We can't just walk back into the middle of a collapsed ruin and hope to find something new." Evelyn turned to him with a fire in her eyes. "We don't need to go back to the temple. We need to follow the trail. There's more to this machine, more to the ancient technology than what we saw. We just need to find the next piece. The machine, it was only one part of a larger network, and we have to understand it before someone else does." Nathaniel, though skeptical, nodded. "All right, but we need to move quickly. If anyone else is aware of what we've activated, they'll be coming for us." Evelyn agreed. The journey to Tibet had already set things in motion, and now she could sense a shadow following them, even if she couldn't see it. The secret order, the mysterious figure who had tried to stop them, they were only the beginning. As the sun began to set, Evelyn and Nathaniel packed their things and set out for the next destination. They had uncovered the first piece of the puzzle, but the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. With each step, they would be drawn deeper into the mystery of the forbidden machines and into the growing conflict over who would control their power. Their next stop was the ancient city of Persepolis in Iran, a place once known for its magnificent structures and complex civilization. Rumors had surfaced that ancient records hidden within the ruins spoke of a technology far ahead of its time. possibly even linked to the machines Evelyn and Nathaniel had awakened. As they approached the crumbling remnants of the city, the ruins stretched out before them, an eerie silence settling over the land. The air was thick with dust, and the only signs of life were the birds circling high above. It felt as if the city had been waiting for them, as if the earth itself had drawn them here, just as it had drawn them to Tibet. Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The very stones of the ancient city seemed to whisper, telling stories of forgotten rulers and civilizations that had risen and fallen. She had come to understand that the machines they were pursuing were not simply tools or weapons. They were relics of a time when humanity had achieved a level of technology that was beyond imagination. As they moved deeper into the ruins, they came across a hidden chamber beneath the main palace, a secret vault buried for millennia. Inside, they found a set of stone tablets, inscribed with strange symbols similar to those they had seen at the temple in Tibet. It was a key, a map, a guide to the next stage of their journey. But it was also a warning. "This is just the beginning," Nathaniel said, reading the tablets aloud. "We're not the only ones who know about this. Someone else has been here before us." Evelyn's heart raced. It was true. The knowledge contained within these tablets was not new to them. Others, perhaps a shadow organization or rival adventurers, had uncovered this secret long ago. Whoever they were likely already on their way to claim what Evelyn and Nathaniel had just discovered. "Then we have to move faster," Evelyn replied, her voice filled with determination. "We're not going to let them beat us to the next piece." As they left the vault and made their way back into the ruins, the sky above them began to darken. In the distance, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the empty streets. They were not alone. Whoever had been following them was closing in. Evelyn looked at Nathaniel one last time before they sprinted toward the exit. "We have to get out of here. They're close." The air grew thick with tension as Evelyn and Nathaniel raced through the crumbling streets of Persepolis, the sound of footsteps echoing behind them. It was clear that they were being pursued, and the chase had only just begun. The ruins of the ancient city, once a thriving metropolis, now seemed like a labyrinth of danger, a perfect backdrop for the secret war unfolding around them. Evelyn's mind raced as she led the way, her steps sure despite the uneven ground beneath her feet. The tablets they had uncovered in the vault held valuable information, but they were not the only ones seeking this knowledge. Whoever was following them had been trained to find what was hidden, to take it for themselves, and that made them incredibly dangerous. "We need to get to the outpost," Evelyn said, breathless, as they turned a corner. "There's a network of safe houses and contacts who can help us, people who know what we're dealing with. If we don't get there before they catch up, we'll have no way of stopping them." Nathaniel nodded, his expression grim. "Do you think we can outrun them?" "Not if we're not careful," Evelyn replied. "But I know the city. If we can get to the lower tunnels, we can lose them in the catacombs beneath the city. It's a maze of old passageways, and not many know how to navigate them. We'll be safe there, at least for a while." The two of them quickened their pace, weaving through the ancient streets, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of their pursuers. The setting sun cast long shadows, and the once majestic structures of Persepolis now seemed like haunted monoliths, their silent faces watching as Evelyn and Nathaniel moved toward the unknown. As they neared the entrance to the lower tunnels, a figure emerged from the shadows. A man, tall and cloaked in black, stepped into their path. His face was hidden, but Evelyn could sense the presence of someone who had been watching them for far too long. "Not so fast," the figure said, his voice cold and commanding. "You've activated the machine, and now it's time to pay the price." Evelyn's heart raced. This was it, the figure from Tibet, or at least one of his kind. They had been prepared for this confrontation, but now that it was happening, the reality of their situation hit her hard. "Who are you?" Evelyn demanded, taking a step forward. "What do you want from us?" The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved closer, his cloak swirling around him like a shadow. He wasn't alone. Two more figures appeared from the darkness, each as menacing as the first. "We are the Order of the Forgotten," he said at last, his eyes gleaming from behind his mask. "We have been protecting the ancient knowledge for centuries. We've seen what happens when the forbidden machines are activated. And now, you must be stopped. Nathaniel stepped in front of Evelyn, positioning himself between her and the mysterious figures. We're not afraid of you. We've come too far to let you stop us now. The figure tilted his head as if amused. You misunderstand. We are not here to stop you. We are here to prevent disaster. The machines you seek are not meant for human hands. They will destroy everything you know. You will be erased, as will all of humanity, if you continue down this path. Evelyn stood tall. I don't believe you. I've seen what the machine can do. It's a tool for progress, not destruction. The figure's laugh was chilling. That is what they all say. The machines were not created to advance civilization. They were created to control it. Those who wield them will find themselves in a war they cannot win. You cannot comprehend the power you have unleashed. Evelyn and Nathaniel exchanged a glance. They had come so far, but now it seemed they were on the edge of a precipice, caught between forces far older and more powerful than they could have ever imagined. We don't need to fight, Evelyn said, her voice steady but determined. We don't need to destroy the machines. We just need to understand them, to harness their power for the good of humanity. The figure's eyes hardened. You are naive. You think you can control what was never meant to be controlled. The machines were left dormant for a reason. Those who woke them will be their downfall. Before Evelyn could respond, the figure made a swift motion. One of his companions pulled out a glowing stone, and in an instant, the ground beneath them cracked open. A surge of energy erupted from the earth, knocking them both off their feet. The world spun around them as the ancient power of the machines seemed to awaken again, sending waves of energy that rattled their very bones. Evelyn gasped, struggling to regain her balance. We have to get out of here. The machines, they're responding to the threat. Nathaniel gripped her arm tightly, his face filled with fear. We're too late. It's too powerful. But Evelyn wasn't ready to give up. She remembered the tablets they had uncovered, the map that led them to this place. The machines could be controlled. She was sure of it. If they could just get to the right chamber, if they could reach the heart of the power source, maybe they could stop the destruction. Follow me, she shouted, pulling Nathaniel toward a narrow passageway leading deeper into the ruins. They ran, the echoes of their pursuers fading as they descended into the tunnels below. As they moved through the catacombs, the tremors from above grew fainter, and the glow of the stone they had activated began to dim. But Evelyn knew the danger wasn't over. They had unleashed something far beyond their understanding, and there was no telling what consequences lay ahead. Evelyn and Nathaniel plunged deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels beneath Persepolis, the damp air growing colder as they moved further into the earth. Their footsteps echoed off the stone walls, and the faint glow of the mysterious stone they had triggered cast long shadows along the passageway. The tremors above had subsided, but the danger was far from over. Their pursuers were still out there, hunting them, determined to stop them from unlocking the true power of the forbidden machines. We have to keep going, Evelyn urged, her voice steady but urgent. We're close. The chamber that holds the core of the machine should be just ahead. Nathaniel nodded, his face set in a grim expression. I don't like this, Evelyn. I don't trust that we're not walking into a trap. They were prepared for us. They knew we would come for this. I know, she replied, her mind racing. But we have no choice. The machines are beyond us now. They're already beginning to react. If we don't stop them, everything could unravel. The sound of footsteps came from behind them. Not just one or two people, but a group. They were closing in. They're getting closer, Nathaniel shouted. We need to hurry. Evelyn pushed forward, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The passageway narrowed, and the faint light of their stone illuminated an ornate door at the end. Ancient symbols similar to those they had seen in the temple in Tibet adorned the surface, winding around a central spiral. It looked like a seal, a warning of something trapped inside. This is it, Evelyn whispered, reaching for the door. The core chamber. This is where the heart of the machine lies. The moment her hand touched the door, it swung open, revealing an enormous underground chamber. The air inside was thick with energy, crackling with a force that seemed to pulse with life. In the center of the room stood an enormous contraption, a machine like nothing Evelyn had ever seen. It was a hybrid of metal and crystal, with twisting, serpentine cables stretching across the room like veins. At its center, a glowing orb hummed with power, and the floor was etched with more of the ancient symbols, forming a perfect circle around it. "This is it," Nathaniel said, awe and fear evident in his voice. "This is the heart of it, the core of the machines." Evelyn moved closer, her eyes wide as she studied the intricate design. She could feel the hum of the machine in her bones, like a distant heartbeat that resonated in the air. This was no simple technology. It was something far beyond the comprehension of any modern scientist or engineer. "We need to shut it down," Nathaniel said, his voice laced with urgency. "If this thing is connected to the machines we activated, it could bring down the whole world." "I agree," Evelyn said. "But how?" As she approached the center of the room, the ground trembled again, this time with a greater intensity. A low, guttural growl echoed through the chamber, and the orb at the center of the machine began to glow brighter. It was as if the machine had sensed their presence, and it wasn't going to let them interfere. The doors behind them slammed shut, trapping them inside. "We're locked in," Nathaniel said, panic creeping into his voice. "Stay calm," Evelyn replied. "We knew this was coming. The machine is reacting to our presence. It's trying to protect itself." As she stepped closer to the orb, she noticed something strange, an inscription near the base, partially obscured by dust and age. It was written in a language she had never seen before, but something about it felt familiar. She recognized some of the symbols from the tablets they had uncovered. "Eureka," she whispered. "This is it. This is the key." Nathaniel moved beside her. "What are you talking about? Can you read it?" Evelyn nodded. "Not entirely, but I know enough. These symbols, they're a series of commands. Instructions to control the machine. We can deactivate it, but we have to focus. There's no time." The orb's glow intensified, and the hum of the machine grew louder, reverberating through the chamber. The temperature in the room seemed to rise as the power of the machine reached its peak. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed once again. This time, they were much closer. "We don't have much time," Nathaniel said, his voice strained. "They're here." Evelyn's fingers trembled as she traced the symbols on the machine. She could feel the energy coursing through the air, urging her to hurry. The fate of everything rested on her ability to unlock the final sequence and shut down the machine before it triggered its full potential. With a final, desperate push, Evelyn completed the sequence. The machine's hum reached a deafening pitch, and for a moment, it seemed like the entire chamber was going to explode. But then, silence. The orb at the center of the machine flickered and then dimmed, its power neutralized. The air seemed to settle, and the oppressive energy that had filled the chamber faded. "We did it," Nathaniel said, breathing a sigh of relief. "It's over." But Evelyn wasn't convinced. She stepped back from the machine, her eyes scanning the room. The danger wasn't over. "Not yet. Look," she said, pointing toward the door. It was opening slowly, revealing the figures that had been pursuing them. They had arrived. The leader of the Order of the Forgotten emerged first, his cloak billowing around him. "You've activated the machine," he said coldly. "But you don't understand what you've done. The machines were never meant to be controlled. They're the legacy of a forgotten race, one that existed long before humanity. And now, the consequences will unfold." Evelyn turned to face him, her expression resolute. "We haven't finished. There's more to uncover. If we don't stop them, the power you fear will fall into the wrong hands." The Order's leader stepped forward. "You have no idea what you've awakened. The machine you've activated wasn't a weapon. It was a beacon, and now that it has been triggered, the signal is reaching across the stars." Evelyn froze. "What do you mean? A signal?" The man's mask shifted slightly, revealing a hint of a smile. The forbidden machines were not just designed by ancient civilizations. They were gifts sent by those beyond our world. And now, they are calling home. The air in the chamber grew still, but the tension was unbearable. Evelyn's mind raced as the implications of the Order's leader's words began to sink in. The machine wasn't just an ancient relic or a tool of destruction. It was a signal, a beacon, calling something or someone from beyond the stars. For a long moment, Evelyn could only stare at the leader, his cryptic smile sending a chill down her spine. Nathaniel, too, was silent, clearly trying to process the information. Finally, Evelyn broke the silence. "You're saying this was a message?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "A message from extraterrestrials? From other civilizations?" The leader nodded slowly, the gesture almost solemn. The machines were left behind by a race older than humanity itself. They were not meant for us to control, but to serve as a bridge, an invitation to those who created them. The signal you've activated is not just a warning, it's a summons. Evelyn's mind was reeling. The thought of alien life, of beings capable of such advanced technology, seemed almost impossible. And yet, standing here in this forgotten chamber, surrounded by the ruins of an ancient civilization, she couldn't deny the strange sense of truth in the leader's words. She glanced at the machine, the orb that had once glowed with ominous power, and wondered if it was truly just a device of ancient design or something far more intricate and mysterious. "What happens now?" Nathaniel asked, his voice urgent. "What's going to answer this call? And why are you so determined to keep us from understanding it?" The leader's expression darkened. "You don't realize the danger of what you've done. By activating the machine, you've not only drawn the attention of those who built it, but you've set in motion a chain of events that cannot be undone. The machine was never meant to be turned on. It was a safeguard, a tool to protect humanity from itself." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "You mean you were trying to hide the truth? Keep the world from knowing about this?" The leader's smile faded. "Not to hide the truth. To protect it. The world isn't ready. Humanity has barely scratched the surface of its own potential, let alone the mysteries of the universe. The machines were meant to be forgotten, so that mankind could develop on its own, without interference. And now, the balance has been disturbed. The signal has been sent." Before Evelyn could respond, the ground beneath their feet trembled. At first, it was subtle, but within seconds, the vibrations grew more intense, as if something powerful was stirring deep beneath the earth. The ceiling above them groaned, and the walls cracked with a low, rumbling sound. "Something's coming," Nathaniel whispered, his eyes wide. Evelyn turned toward the leader, desperation creeping into her voice. "What's happening? What have we done?" The leader's expression remained unreadable, but his voice dropped to a low, almost reverent tone. "You've opened the door, and now it's only a matter of time before they arrive." A bright flash of light erupted from the machine's core, momentarily blinding them all. As the light faded, Evelyn felt a strange pressure in the air, a weight that seemed to pull at her very soul. The signal had been sent, and whatever was answering it was drawing closer. Without warning, the walls of the chamber began to shift. The stone groaned and cracked as if something, some immense force, was pushing its way through. The leader stepped back, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and awe. "Get out," he ordered, his voice urgent. "There is no time. You have no idea what you've unleashed, but it is coming. You must leave before it's too late." Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. She had come here seeking knowledge, but now she realized that her quest for truth had led her to the edge of something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The forbidden machines weren't just relics of the past. They were instruments of a long-forgotten power, a power that had been dormant for a reason. "We can't just leave," Nathaniel said, his voice filled with resolve. "We have to stop it. We have to understand what's coming, or we'll never be able to stop it." Evelyn hesitated, torn between her desire to learn the truth and the overwhelming fear that threatened to paralyze her. But there was no turning back now. The signal had been sent. They had awoken something ancient, and it was already on its way. "We need to move," she said finally, her voice resolute. "We have to find a way to shut it down, or we'll be the ones who are erased." The leader looked at her one last time, his expression darkening. "You think you can stop it? You think you can control what was never meant for you to understand?" Evelyn turned away, motioning for Nathaniel to follow. "We don't have a choice." As they sprinted toward the exit, the ground continued to shake. The chamber was collapsing around them, and Evelyn could feel the air growing heavier, more charged. She knew that the answer to the mystery lay somewhere in the ruins, but the clock was ticking. Whatever was coming for them was already too close. They emerged from the catacombs, the sky above them darkening with ominous clouds. The distant sound of a low, rumbling hum filled the air, as if something enormous was moving beneath the surface of the earth. The signal had been answered, and whatever had responded, it was coming for them. Evelyn and Nathaniel stood on the edge of the ruins, the horizon stretching out before them, full of uncertainty. The story they had uncovered was only the beginning. They had unlocked a door to a truth that no one was ready for, and now they had to face the consequences. And as the sky above them seemed to shimmer with the presence of something otherworldly, Evelyn realized that their journey had only just begun. The sky above them crackled with a strange, unearthly energy, as if the very fabric of the atmosphere had been altered by the signal that had been sent. The ground beneath their feet continued to tremble, and Evelyn could feel the hair on the back of her neck stand up, as if something was watching them from the darkness. The hum in the air grew louder, vibrating through her bones, a constant reminder that whatever was coming for them was not of this world. "Do you hear that?" Nathaniel whispered, his voice barely audible over the rising noise. "It's getting closer." Evelyn nodded, her heart racing. "It's not just a sound, it's a presence. Something is coming, something we can't even begin to understand." She scanned the horizon, trying to make sense of the unnatural phenomena unfolding around them. The ruins of Persepolis, once a symbol of human achievement, now seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. The ancient stones seemed to hum in resonance with the power being released. There was no turning back now. "We have to find shelter," Nathaniel urged, grabbing her arm. "This isn't safe. We don't know what we're dealing with." Evelyn turned to him, her eyes steely with determination. "We don't have time to hide. We need to find out what's happening, what this signal is calling. If we can stop it, we need to do it now, before it's too late." With that, they made their way toward the outer edges of the ruins, seeking the highest vantage point they could find. The sky was now dark, the clouds swirling in unnatural patterns. As they climbed to the top of a partially collapsed tower, Evelyn felt a strange pull in the air, as if the wind itself was guiding them toward something. The energy in the atmosphere was thick, almost tangible. From their elevated position, they saw it, a massive, glowing object far on the horizon, growing steadily closer. It seemed to defy all logic, hovering just above the ground. Its shape was impossible to define, constantly shifting, as if made of pure light and shadow. It was the source of the hum, the disturbance that had been steadily intensifying since the activation of the machine. Evelyn and Nathaniel stared in shock. The object was moving with deliberate purpose, heading straight for them. "What is that?" Nathaniel breathed. "Is that what we woke up?" Evelyn didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind raced, trying to comprehend what she was seeing, but no explanation made sense. It wasn't like any aircraft she had ever seen. There were no engines, no wings, and yet it moved with grace, as if propelled by some force beyond the known laws of physics. The object grew closer and closer, its form becoming more distinct. It was a colossal structure, almost like a ship, but it was not made of metal. The surface appeared to shift and ripple, as if it were composed of energy itself, flickering in and out of visibility. It was as if it were part of the fabric of space and time, impossible to touch, yet impossibly real. Suddenly, a sound filled the air, a low, resonating hum that seemed to come from deep within the object itself. The ground beneath them rumbled, the vibrations intensifying as the object came to a halt just above the ruins. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. "It was here. Stay back," she whispered to Nathaniel, her voice trembling with both fear and awe. "This is it. This is what we woke up." The object hovered in place, its glow pulsing softly, and then, slowly, the air around it began to shift. The very atmosphere seemed to bend and warp, as if space itself was warping to accommodate the alien presence. Evelyn felt a strange pressure in her chest, like the very air had become thicker, charged with an energy beyond her comprehension. From the center of the object, a beam of light shot downward, striking the earth with a force that shook the ground beneath their feet. It was as though the beam was reaching directly into the heart of the machine, as if the object was now interacting with the power they had unlocked in the rivers. Then, from the beam of light, figures began to materialize. At first, they were mere shapes, faint outlines in the light. But as the figures solidified, it became clear that they were humanoid, tall, slender beings, their bodies composed of shimmering light, their faces obscured by glowing helmets. They moved with purpose, descending from the beam with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Evelyn's heart raced as she realized the truth. These were the beings who had created the machines, the creators of the forbidden technology that had been dormant for so long. They were here. Do you see this? Nathaniel gasped. This is real. It's happening. The beings moved forward, their steps silent, their forms flickering as if they were not fully solid, not fully real. They walked toward Evelyn and Nathaniel, their presence heavy in the air, and for the first time in Evelyn's life, she felt a deep, instinctive fear. These were not visitors from another country or explorers from another planet. They were something far older, far more powerful, and they had been waiting. One of the beings, its form taller than the others, stepped forward and stopped just a few feet away from Evelyn. Its glowing helmet turned slightly, as if studying her. And then it spoke, its voice low and resonant, like a melody that reverberated through her very soul. "You have awakened us," the being said, its voice carrying a strange weight. "The signal was sent. We have come." Evelyn struggled to keep her composure. Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain calm. The being's form flickered again, and for a moment, Evelyn saw something beneath the shimmering surface, an ancient wisdom, an unfathomable intelligence that stretched back through time, beyond anything humanity could comprehend. "We are the architects," the being replied, "the creators of the machines. We are the ones who shaped the stars and the cycles of life. We have waited long for the day when you would awaken the signal. And now, we have returned." Evelyn's mind raced. "What do you want from us? Why are you here?" The architect's gaze deepened, as though it were peering directly into her thoughts. "We do not seek to harm you, human, but the machines you have awakened were never meant to be used by your kind. They are beyond your understanding, beyond your control. You have disturbed the balance, and now you must face the consequences." Evelyn stood frozen, her body tingling with a strange energy as the truth began to settle in. The forbidden machines were not merely tools. They were keys to a power that no human could control. The signal they had activated had opened the door for these beings, the architects, to return to a world that had long forgotten their existence. And now that they were here, there was no telling what would happen next. The architect's words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of an unimaginable truth. Evelyn stood frozen, her heart pounding as the realization struck her with brutal force. The beings before her were not just visitors. They were the creators, the ones who had shaped the very fabric of existence. And they had returned, not out of curiosity or benevolence, but because something had gone terribly wrong. "What do you mean we must face the consequences?" Nathaniel asked, his voice trembling as he tried to make sense of the incomprehensible. The architect's glowing helmet turned slightly toward him, and the air seemed to grow colder. "You have unlocked the machines, human. You have disturbed a balance that was never meant to be altered. The machines were designed to maintain the equilibrium of your world. But now, the fabric of reality is weakening. Your kind was never meant to wield such power." Evelyn's thoughts raced. She had come to this point seeking answers, seeking knowledge. But now, as she stood face to face with the creators of the forbidden machines, she realized the enormity of what they had uncovered. The machines were not tools for advancement, but for containment, a force that, once unleashed, would not easily be contained again. "How do we fix this?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How can we restore the balance?" You said the machines were designed to maintain it. So what happens if we don't stop this? The architect's form flickered again, its voice resonating like a deep vibration. The consequences will ripple through time, through space. The machines were not just a means of control. They were designed to keep your world from collapsing under the weight of its own power. Now, the systems that have kept your reality stable are unraveling. Without them, your world will disintegrate. The signal you have sent will bring forth forces that cannot be undone. Evelyn felt the ground beneath her feet shift once again, the vibration stronger now, as if the earth itself was trembling in response to the architect's words. The sky overhead seemed to pulse with an unnatural light, and the air grew thick with energy, charged and unpredictable. You're saying we've doomed the planet? Nathaniel asked, panic creeping into his voice. That we've opened a door we can't close? The architect remained silent for a moment, as if considering the magnitude of their question. Finally, it spoke again. The path you have chosen is irreversible. There is no going back. The machines you activated were the last safeguard, designed to stabilize the flow of energy, to prevent your reality from collapsing. Now that they have been triggered, the forces they were meant to contain are breaking free. You cannot control what you have unleashed. Evelyn's stomach twisted with dread as she realized the true scope of their actions. She had thought they could control the machines, unlock their secrets, and use them to advance humanity. But instead, they had broken something that could not be repaired. A fragile thread holding reality together had been cut, and now the world itself was unraveled. We can't just stand here, Nathaniel said, his voice rising with desperation. We need to do something, anything to stop this. If we don't, everything will be destroyed. The architect's form flickered again, and for a brief moment, Evelyn saw something that could only be described as sorrow in its glowing eyes. There is one way to halt the destruction, but it will require a great sacrifice. Evelyn's heart stopped. What kind of sacrifice? She asked, dreading the answer. The architect extended a hand, and in that instant, a projection of the machine's core appeared in the air before them, the swirling patterns of energy that connected the machines to the earth and the sky. The core was pulsing, its energy unstable. To restore balance, the power source of the machine must be severed. It is the only way to stop the collapse. But to do so, one must become the conduit, merging with the core. Only then can the flow of energy be redirected. Only then can the rift be closed. Evelyn's blood ran cold. You want us to merge with the machine? Become part of it. The architect nodded solemnly. It is the only way to save your world. But the price is high. The one who merges with the core will cease to exist as they are. Their essence will become part of the machine, forever bound to it. It is a sacrifice that few are willing to make, but it is the only way. Evelyn looked at Nathaniel, who was staring at the glowing projection, his face pale. The weight of the decision hung heavy between them. If they didn't act, everything would be lost. The world, their lives, everything they had ever known. I can't ask anyone to make that sacrifice, Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. But if there's no other way, if there's no hope for the future without it. Nathaniel looked at her, his eyes filled with determination. You don't have to ask. I'll do it. Evelyn shook her head, her heart aching. No, Nathaniel. This is my responsibility. I'm the one who activated the machine. I can't let you. Nathaniel stopped. His voice was calm, but resolute. You don't have to carry this alone. We've both come this far together. If anyone should make the sacrifice, it's me. You've already lost so much. Let me do this. Evelyn felt a pang in her chest, a sharp stab of grief. The idea of losing Nathaniel, of him merging with the machine and disappearing from her life forever, was unbearable. But deep down, she knew he was right. There was no time left. They had both been part of this journey, and now it was his turn to save what was left. No, Nathaniel, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I can't let you. But Nathaniel stepped forward, his hand on her shoulder. You can, and you will. This is our only chance. The architect stepped back, observing them silently. Time is running out. You must decide. Evelyn stood at the crossroads of destiny. torn between her love for Nathaniel and the knowledge that they could not escape what had been set in motion. The rift between the fabric of reality was widening, and unless one of them made the ultimate sacrifice, everything would be lost. With a heavy heart, Evelyn nodded. I understand. I'll do it. The architect extended its hand, and the room seemed to hum with energy. Then prepare yourself. The sacrifice must be made now. As Evelyn stepped toward the core, her thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions. She had never imagined this would be her fate, but now, standing on the edge of this unknown, she knew it was the only choice. The world depended on her. The chamber around them seemed to hold its breath as Evelyn took her final steps toward the core of the machine. The weight of the decision bore down on her heart a heavy drumbeat in her chest. The architect stood silently, watching, as though it had seen this moment unfold countless times before. Nathaniel remained behind her, his eyes filled with sorrow and something deeper, pride, perhaps, in the bravery of the woman he had come to admire so much. Evelyn reached the pulsating core, the energy from the machine swirling around her in an electric current that tingled through her skin. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, like standing on the precipice of a vast abyss, with no guarantee of what lay beyond. You know what this means? The architect's voice echoed, almost mournful. You will no longer be the same. You will merge with the machine, becoming part of its essence. Your body will cease to exist in the way you know it. Only your consciousness will remain intertwined with the power that controls the balance of this world. Evelyn nodded, her resolve hardening. I understand. If it's the only way to save everything we know, I'll do it. She reached out, her hand trembling as it hovered just above the core. The energy surged, responding to her presence, drawing her in. For a moment, she hesitated, her mind flashing through every memory, every moment of her life. She thought of Nathaniel, of the long journey they had shared, of the discoveries and dangers they had faced together. But now, in this moment, she was alone, standing at the threshold of something far beyond her understanding. Goodbye, she whispered, and with a deep breath, she placed her hand on the core. The moment her skin made contact with the machine, the world around her seemed to explode into light. The core flared to life, its energy swirling and expanding, engulfing her in an overwhelming flood of sensation. Evelyn felt her body begin to dissolve, the very molecules of her being unraveling and merging with the vast energy flowing through the machine. It was as if time itself slowed. She could feel her consciousness stretching, expanding, blending with the infinite knowledge of the machines. The history of the architects, their creation of the forbidden technology, their purpose, everything rushed through her mind in an instant. She saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the delicate balance they had maintained, and the terrible cost of disturbing that balance. She saw the future, her own future, and the future of the world. A world that would fall into chaos if the machine's power was not controlled. She understood now. The machine was not just a tool of destruction, it was a tool of preservation, a way to keep the forces that shaped reality in check. But as she became one with the energy, she also felt the pull of something else. The architects, their ancient alien presence. They were not gods, but they were something much older and more powerful than anything humanity had ever encountered. Their influence had shaped the course of history, but they had also been distant, unknowable, their motives hidden from those they had left behind. Evelyn could feel her physical form fading, slipping away into the vast network of energy that powered the machine. Her body was no longer her own. She was part of something greater now, something both beautiful and terrifying. She was becoming the machine. The surge of energy intensified, and Evelyn's thoughts became a blur of knowledge and power, too vast for any human mind to comprehend. And then, just as the overwhelming flood of energy reached its peak, it stopped. The chaos stilled. The world around her, both familiar and alien, seemed to settle into a new equilibrium. And in that moment, Evelyn knew that the balance had been restored. The rift in reality had been closed. Back outside, Nathaniel stood at the edge of the chamber, his heart heavy with grief and yet somehow still filled with hope. The trembling of the earth had subsided, the hum of the machine had faded, and the sky above them had cleared. The oppressive energy that had been so thick in the air now seemed to have lifted. For a long while, he stood motionless, waiting. He wanted to believe that Evelyn had done it, that she had saved the world. But the silence that now filled the air was deafening. He had seen her make the ultimate sacrifice, but would it be enough? And then, a faint whisper, a voice, not in words but in his mind, echoed through the space. It was a voice he knew, a voice he had heard countless times in the quiet moments of their journey together. Nathaniel. His breath caught in his throat. He knew that voice. It was Evelyn. He spun around, searching the now quiet chamber, but there was no sign of her. The architect's form had disappeared, leaving only the still remnants of the machine behind. But then, slowly, he felt a presence, something that wasn't quite physical, but real in its own way. The air shimmered around him, and before his eyes, the shape of Evelyn began to materialize. Her form was translucent, shimmering with the same energy that powered the machine. She was no longer flesh and bone, but something different. Nathaniel, she whispered again, and this time, he could feel her presence more clearly than ever. Is it really you? He asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. What happened to you? Evelyn's form flickered, and she appeared to step closer, though she was still intangible, bound to the energy of the machine. I've become part of the machine, Nathaniel. My body is gone, but my consciousness is still here. I am part of the balance now, part of the power that keeps the world stable. Nathaniel reached out, his hand trembling. But you're not gone. You're still here with me. I will always be with you. Evelyn's voice replied softly, filled with both sadness and peace. But I can't return to what I was. I made my choice. I've saved the world, Nathaniel. The balance has been restored. The rift is closed. A strange sense of calm washed over him as he looked at her shimmering form. She was no longer the woman he had known, but she was still Evelyn, still part of him, part of the world they had fought so hard to protect. I love you, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Evelyn smiled, her form flickering once more. I love you too, and I'm at peace. The world is safe now. You will continue on. Your journey isn't over, Nathaniel. There's still so much to discover. I'll always be with you. And with that, her form began to fade, leaving only the soft echo of her voice in the air. The world was changing, but so too were Nathaniel's thoughts. He had lost Evelyn, but in a way, she was still with him, still part of the world she had saved. The future stretched out before him, unknown, but full of potential. The signal had been sent, the forbidden machines had been awakened, and the ancient powers had returned. But the true journey was just beginning. Nathaniel stood in the quiet aftermath, the weight of the world pressing down on him, as Evelyn's ethereal form faded into the energy of the machine. She was gone, and yet she wasn't. Her sacrifice had saved everything. But now he was left to pick up the pieces of a world that had been forever altered by their actions. The machine, once a terrifying force of destruction, was now a silent sentinel, guarding the balance of existence. And Evelyn was bound to it, a part of something far greater than either of them had ever imagined. He felt the emptiness of her absence, but he also felt something else, an overwhelming sense of purpose. He could no longer walk the path of discovery as he had before. He couldn't go back to being just an archaeologist or adventurer. The world had been saved, but there was so much left to understand. So many questions remained unanswered, and Evelyn's final words echoed in his mind. Your journey isn't over, Nathaniel. He turned toward the ruined machine, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what they had both sacrificed. The energy within it still pulsed faintly, but there was no sign of the architects, no more whispers in the air. The world was quiet now, too quiet, but something lingered beneath the surface, a promise of more to come. He couldn't shake the feeling that the awakening of the forbidden machines had been only the beginning. He took one last look at the ruins of Persepolis. The ancient city was no longer just a place of history. It had become a symbol of the crossroads at which humanity now stood. The boundaries between the known and the unknown had been shattered, and the future was wide open. He couldn't stay here. There was too much more to discover. Nathaniel turned and walked away from the ruins, his path uncertain, but his resolve clear. He knew the world was on the edge of a new era. Whether it would be one of peace or destruction, only time would tell. But whatever came next, he would be ready. As Nathaniel left the ruins behind, he didn't realize just how soon the next chapter of his journey would begin. The global powers had taken notice of the events in Persepolis. The signals sent by the forbidden machines had reverberated across the planet, and the world's governments, organizations, and even clandestine societies had begun to make their moves. He had barely made it back to his safe house before he received a visit. A shadowy figure, cloaked in dark robes, appeared at his door. It was a woman, tall, with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through him. "You've been busy, Nathaniel," she said, her voice low but commanding. He tensed, instinctively reaching for the gun he kept hidden beneath his jacket. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, though it was far from friendly. "My name is Maria Voss. I represent an organization you've probably heard of, the Consortium." The Consortium? Nathaniel's blood ran cold. He had heard whispers of them, an ancient secret society that had operated in the shadows for centuries, manipulating world events and controlling knowledge far beyond the reach of governments. "What do you want with me?" Nathaniel asked, keeping his voice steady despite the unease building in his chest. Maria stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous intelligence. "You've activated the signal. You've awakened something that the world was never meant to understand. And now, it's time for you to help us uncover the rest." Nathaniel's mind raced. The Consortium? They had always been the unseen hand, the puppet masters pulling the strings behind the curtains of world events. And now, it seemed, they were interested in him. "You're not the only one who wants to understand what happened in Persepolis," Maria continued. "We've been tracking the forbidden machines for years. But there's something different about you. You've touched the power, Nathaniel. And now, you're a part of something much larger than you can imagine." He felt a chill creep down his spine. "What do you mean?" "We know the signal was a call," Maria said, her gaze intense. "A call to the architects, yes. But it was also a call to something else. Something older. And you've opened the door. You've unlocked the first part of the puzzle." Nathaniel's pulse quickened. "What do you want me to do?" Maria stepped back, a faint smile curling her lips. "We want you to help us find the rest. The architects may have given you a glimpse, but they've only revealed a fraction of the truth. There's more out there, Nathaniel. There's more to the machines, and there's more to what's coming." Nathaniel stared at her, torn. He didn't trust her, but he could no longer deny that the world had changed. The machines had been activated, the signal sent, and Evelyn had sacrificed everything to restore balance. But even she hadn't known everything. No one had. "I don't trust you," Nathaniel said flatly. Maria's smile faded, but there was no malice in her expression, only a cold, calculated certainty. "You don't have to trust me, Nathaniel, but you've seen what's out there. You've felt it, haven't you? The pull of the unknown. The machines may have stopped the collapse for now, but the question is, what happens next? You're a part of it now, whether you like it or not." Nathaniel hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. The events in Persepolis had set in motion something far larger than he could have ever anticipated. Evelyn's sacrifice, the return of the architects, and the strange signal that had bridged the gap between humanity and the unknown. It was only the beginning. "Tell me more," he said, finally breaking the silence. Maria nodded, and in her eyes, Nathaniel saw something cold and dangerous. "Good. We have a lot of work to do, Nathaniel. The Consortium is watching, and there are others who seek the machines. But if you help us, together we can uncover the truth. The future is in our hands." And with that, she turned and left, disappearing into the shadows from which she had emerged. Nathaniel was left standing in the doorway, his mind racing with the weight of her words. He had just crossed a line, one from which there was no return. Evelyn's sacrifice had saved the world, for now. But as Nathaniel took his first step into the unknown once more, he realized that the true journey was only just beginning. The machines were no longer just relics of the past. They were the key to a future that no one could predict. The game had changed. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, his thoughts swirling like the shadows that seemed to swallow up Maria Voss as she disappeared into the night. He could still feel the weight of her words pressing down on him, the realization that he was no longer just a passive participant in the world's mysteries, but a key player in a game far larger and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The consortium had seen something in him, a connection to the forbidden machines, a potential to unlock the next pieces of the puzzle. But as the events in Persepolis had shown him, knowledge came at a cost. Evelyn's sacrifice had been the ultimate price to pay for the temporary restoration of balance. But now the world was teetering on the edge once more, with forces beyond his comprehension coming into play. He took a deep breath, stepping away from the doorway and into the dimly lit room. His mind kept replaying the moment he had merged with the energy of the machine. The overwhelming flood of knowledge, the voices of the architects, and the strange, familiar presence of Evelyn, even as she had faded away. It had felt like an awakening, a connection to something much larger than anything he could have imagined. But now, that knowledge felt like a weight on his shoulders. The consortium wanted him to help them uncover more about the machines. They had said that there was more to the signal, more to the call that had been sent out. But what did that mean? And why had the architects chosen to reveal themselves now? After all this time, what had they hoped to accomplish by awakening the machines and sending the signal across the stars? As he sank into the chair, the weight of the world pressing in on him, Nathaniel realized that he could no longer go back to being the curious archaeologist he once was. His journey had taken a dark turn, and now there was no turning back. The next few days were a blur. Maria Voss had insisted that Nathaniel meet with the consortium's higher-ups, those who were truly pulling the strings behind the scenes. They had made it clear that they had been watching him for some time, waiting for the right moment to approach him. And now, that moment had arrived. As he walked through the sleek, modern corridors of the consortium's headquarters, Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into a web he might never be able to escape. The consortium was powerful, global in scope, with fingers in every part of society. They were the shadow organization that pulled the strings of history, and now they were asking for his help. At the end of the corridor, a large, steel door slid open, and Nathaniel stepped into a conference room that was as cold and sterile as the rest of the building. A long table stretched across the room, and at its head sat a man in a sharp suit, his face obscured by the glow of a monitor displaying complex data. Dr. Nathaniel Blackwood. The man's voice was calm, authoritative, and slightly amused. "We've been expecting you." Nathaniel nodded, his unease growing by the second. "What do you want from me?" The man leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of his face. "The signal you activated in Persepolis was not an isolated event. It was a trigger, something much larger than you could possibly understand. The machines, the architects, they were never meant to be discovered. And yet, you've opened the door." Nathaniel's pulse quickened. "What does that mean? What's coming?" The man gave a slight smile, though there was no humor in it. "What's coming is beyond anything you've ever seen. The machines are just the beginning. What you've done has alerted forces that have been dormant for millennia. And they're coming back, Nathaniel. The architects have awoken something much older, something far more powerful than you can imagine." Nathaniel felt his stomach tighten. "And you want me to help you stop it?" The man nodded slowly. "Not stop it. Control it. You see, there are other organizations, other powers, that are after what you've uncovered. The machines are just the surface. They hold the key to untold knowledge, to power, and to the future of humanity. The architects may have been the ones to create them, but now, it's up to us to control them." Nathaniel's mind raced. He could feel the pull of the unknown, the urge to dive deeper into the mysteries that had been set into motion. But he also knew that the consortium, with all their power and resources, was not interested in saving the world. They were interested in using it, controlling it for their own gain. "I'm not your pawn," Nathaniel said, his voice firm. "You can't just use me to manipulate these forces. Whatever's coming, It's bigger than all of us, and I won't help you make the same mistakes again." The man's eyes darkened. "You have no choice, Dr. Blackwood. The world has changed, and you're a part of it now. We'll help you understand the power you've uncovered. We'll help you control it." Nathaniel turned and headed for the door. "I'm not interested in your control." Before he could leave, the man spoke again, his voice cold and final. "You will be Nathaniel, whether you want it or not." Outside, Nathaniel stood in the quiet city, his mind still spinning. He had come to this place to uncover the secrets of ancient civilizations, to learn about the forbidden machines. But now, he realized the truth was much darker. There were forces at play that he could not possibly control, and the consortium was just one of them. But as the night descended, Nathaniel felt the pull of something greater, something that he could not ignore. The signal had been sent. The architects had awakened, and he could feel the weight of their power pulling him toward a future he wasn't ready for. The machines were the key to everything, and Nathaniel was the one who held the answers. But with the consortium, the architects, and the unknown forces closing in, would he be able to control it? Or would the power he had awakened destroy everything he held dear? Nathaniel walked away from the consortium's headquarters with a sense of finality. The heavy weight of their words lingered in his mind, but he couldn't allow himself to be swayed. No matter how much they promised to help him understand, to control the power he had awakened, he couldn't trust them. The knowledge he had gained, the connection to the forbidden machines, none of it was meant to be controlled by a single group. It was bigger than all of them. As he left the sleek, towering building behind, the city stretched out before him, its streets alive with the hum of everyday life. It seemed so normal, so unaware of the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. The world, to the casual observer, was still the same. But Nathaniel knew better now. Everything had changed. The signal sent by the machines, the awakening of the architects, they were only the beginning. The machines were the key. He understood that now. And the truth they contained was far too powerful to be left in the hands of those who would abuse it. He had seen the potential for destruction, for domination, in the eyes of the consortium. They weren't interested in saving humanity. They were interested in controlling it. Nathaniel couldn't let that happen. Not again. But the question remained. What was the right course of action? What did the future hold for him, for the world? The power of the machines was real, undeniable, and it would continue to pulse through the world, shaping the destiny of every living being. And with the rift between the known and the unknown widening, Nathaniel realized that he couldn't face this alone. Evelyn's sacrifice had saved them from one collapse, but now, another loomed on the horizon, one far beyond his understanding. His phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him from his thoughts. It was a message from Maria Voss. "Asterisk, we are watching. You can't run forever, Nathaniel. You are part of this now." Asterisk. He stared at the message for a long moment before pocketing the phone. The consortium's grip was tightening, but they didn't understand. They couldn't possibly understand what they were dealing with. The machines were not meant to be wielded as weapons or tools of control. They were relics of an ancient purpose, one that had been lost to time, but not to him. He had felt their pull, their connection to something greater than himself, something that could reshape the world in ways no one could imagine. As Nathaniel continued walking through the city, a plan began to take shape in his mind. He had to get to the heart of it, the core of the machines. It was the only way to prevent humanity from falling into the hands of those who sought to control what was never meant to be controlled. But first, he had to break free from the web the consortium was spinning around him. He needed allies, people who understood that the future could not be shaped by power-hungry organizations, but by those who would seek to protect the knowledge the machines held, not exploit it. He couldn't do this alone. Months passed, and Nathaniel's search for answers led him across the globe. He met with historians, archaeologists, and rogue scholars who had been tracking the forbidden machines long before he had ever stumbled upon them. Some were part of secret societies that had been hiding knowledge of the machines for centuries. Others had worked in the shadows, seeking to keep the ancient power from being unleashed. Along the way, Nathaniel found the first true ally he had ever had in this journey, Dr. Lena Torres, a a brilliant scientist whose research into the energy fields surrounding ancient sites had unknowingly brought her to the same conclusion Nathaniel had reached. She, too, had felt the pulse of the machines, had seen the power they contained, and had made it her mission to protect it. Together, they began to piece together the true purpose of the machines, how they worked, what they could unlock, and how they could prevent the coming storms. But their journey wasn't without obstacles. The consortium was always one step behind them, watching their every move, sending agents to intercept them at every turn. The ancient orders that once guarded the knowledge of the machines were now scattered and broken, their cryptic messages growing more desperate as they realized the forces awakening from the deep past were beyond anyone's control. The closer Nathaniel and Lena got to uncovering the truth, the more dangerous their path became. The rift was growing. Then one day they found it, a hidden temple deep in the jungles of South America, long believed to be a myth, held the final key, the heart of the machine. But the moment Nathaniel stepped into the temple, he knew the true test was upon him. A voice echoed in his mind, familiar, comforting, and bittersweet. Nathaniel, it was Evelyn. He stopped in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. For a moment, he thought he could feel her presence, something beyond the physical, a whisper of the energy she had become. The connection between them had never truly been severed. Asterisk, I am still here. You must finish this. Only you can. Asterisk. Her voice faded, leaving behind a profound stillness. Nathaniel closed his eyes, his heart heavy with grief and determination. He knew now what he had to do. The heart of the machine would give him the power to control the flow of energy that was tearing the world apart. But it would also demand a sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice. He could feel it in the air, the weight of the decision that lay before him. The world could be saved, but it would come at the cost of something irreplaceable. A part of him, perhaps even his humanity. He turned to Lena, who stood beside him, her face a mixture of awe and fear. We have to stop it, Lena. No one else can. The power that we've uncovered, it's not just knowledge. It's a force, and it's too dangerous for anyone to wield. Lena nodded, her resolve firm. I understand, Nathaniel. We're in this together. But as they approached the machine's core, Nathaniel knew that this was not something they could face together. This was his burden, and his alone. He stepped forward, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had already lost so much. Evelyn, the life he had once known. But this was something different. This was the cost of knowledge. The cost of unlocking the past. With a deep breath, Nathaniel pressed his hand to the core. The machine hummed to life, energy surging through him like nothing he had ever felt. The world seemed to collapse into a single point of light, and in that moment, he knew this was the end of his journey, but it was also the beginning of something new. The rift closed, the balance was restored, and as Nathaniel's consciousness faded, merged with the heart of the machine, he felt Evelyn's presence one last time. Asterisk, you've done it, Nathaniel. You've saved us all. Asterisk. The world, forever changed, began to heal. The forbidden machines, no longer dormant, held the power to reshape reality. But they were now locked in a delicate balance, watched over by those who understood their true purpose. The future remained uncertain, but the legacy of the past had been preserved, and Nathaniel's sacrifice had ensured that humanity would have the chance to forge its own path. The machines would no longer be used as tools of destruction. They were now guardians of balance, just as they were always meant to be. Story 2. The Island of Eternal Night. The sky was a heavy, oppressive shade of indigo as the small plane cut through the air over the vast expanse of ocean. It was supposed to be a routine flight from New Zealand to a remote research station in the Pacific, just a few hours away. But something had gone wrong. At first, the flight was smooth, the steady hum of the engines accompanying background noise to the soft conversation of the passengers. A group of scientists, a few tourists, and a couple of crew members, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, the clouds gathered quickly, like an unnatural force pushing them together. The weather report had been clear, and the pilot had checked it just before takeoff. So why had the storm arrived so suddenly, so violently? The turbulence started small, just a few bumps in the air. Then the plane jolted hard. The seatbelt sign flashed on, and the passengers braced themselves, some gripping their armrests, others whispering anxious words. But nothing could prepare them for what came next. With a deafening roar, the plane dropped, a sickening rush of air sucking them down toward the black waters below. The pilot fought with the controls, but it was clear the storm wasn't just natural. It was something else entirely. The last thing Anna, one of the passengers, remembered was the sharp pain in her chest as the oxygen masks fell and the lights flickered off. And then nothing. When she awoke, it was to the sound of crashing waves. Her head throbbed painfully, and for a moment, she wasn't sure if she was dreaming or alive. Slowly, she opened her eyes, her vision blurry from both the impact and the disorienting blackness that surrounded her. The air was heavy with the salty scent of the sea, but there was something wrong with it. It felt thick, as if it was holding its breath. Anna pushed herself up, wincing at the sharp pain that shot through her side. She looked around in a panic, searching for the wreckage, for any sign of the other passengers. The remains of the plane were scattered around her on a rocky beach. Most of it had been torn apart in the crash, but strangely, there was no one in sight. The sky above her was a deep, unsettling shade of gray, too dark, even for late afternoon. She stumbled to her feet and tried to move toward what was left of the plane. Her legs wobbled, weak from the crash and lack of proper rest. As she reached the wreckage, her eyes landed on a peculiar detail. There were no survivors. Not a single person. No crew. No fellow passengers. The storm that had raged when they crashed had disappeared without a trace. But the eerie stillness of the island made Anna feel as if it was holding its breath, waiting for something. She could hear nothing. No birds, no wind, no insects. Just the steady crash of waves against the rocks, and her own uneven breath. She surveyed the beach for any signs of other life, but found nothing. The only trace of civilization was a small, crumpled piece of paper lodged between the rocks. It was a weathered note, torn at the edges, with only a few words scrawled on it. Asterisk, don't stay past sunset. The island is cursed. Asterisk. The note was a jolt of cold fear running through her. Where had it come from, and who had written it? Anna tried to shake the uneasy feeling crawling up her spine. She needed to find others. She needed to find shelter. Her survival instincts kicked in as she began walking away from the wreckage, scanning the beach for any sign of life. There had to be a settlement, a place where she could find help. But the deeper she walked into the island, the stranger it became. The trees loomed over her, blackened and twisted, as if they had been scorched by something other than fire. The air was unnaturally still, and the path was difficult to navigate as vines and jagged rocks jutted out from the ground. It wasn't long before Anna stumbled upon something that made her blood run cold. In the center of a clearing stood a massive stone structure, ruins, ancient and weathered by time, yet strangely preserved. The architecture was unlike anything Anna had seen before, filled with elaborate carvings and symbols that seemed to shift as her eyes moved over them. But what truly chilled her to the bone were the markings on the ground, a series of circular patterns and strange symbols arranged in a way that seemed to pulse with an energy she couldn't comprehend. She hesitated, then stepped closer, feeling the strange pressure in the air around the stone structure. She looked up at the sky, and for the first time, she realized something was wrong. The sun had barely moved in the sky. It was stuck in place, casting a permanent, dim twilight over the island. The whispers of the wind started to stir, and she heard something, an odd rustling in the distance. Turning sharply, Anna's heart leapt into her throat. In the distance, a figure emerged from the trees. A man, dressed in tattered clothing, moving slowly and stiffly. His eyes were wide, unblinking. "Help me," Anna called out, her voice trembling. "Please, are you from the crash?" The man didn't respond. His head tilted at an unnatural angle, and as he stepped closer, Anna realized with horror that his face was almost vacant, hollow, as if he were not fully alive. Suddenly, he lunged toward her, his arms reaching for her throat. Anna stumbled back in sheer panic. her heart racing as the hollow-eyed man lunged toward her. She barely managed to avoid his grasp, her feet slipping on the wet rocks beneath her. She turned, running blindly through the dense undergrowth, her breath ragged as she pushed herself harder, the strange, eerie silence of the island making her feel as though the very air was pressing down on her chest. The man's footsteps followed her, dragging slowly but steadily behind, almost as if the earth itself was reluctant to let him go. Anna's mind raced. What was happening here? Where had everyone gone? The wreckage, the missing passengers, it didn't make sense. She pushed through a dense thicket of twisted trees, the sound of her pursuer's footsteps growing fainter, but still unmistakable. As she stumbled into a small clearing, she saw what had stopped her. A massive stone archway, ancient and worn by time, stood at the far end, barely visible beneath the overgrowth. For some inexplicable reason, Anna felt drawn to it. Turning back one last time, she caught a glimpse of the man through the trees. His vacant, hollow eyes were fixed on her. He was getting closer, but somehow it didn't feel right. His movements were unnatural, slow, stiff, like a puppet with tangled strings. She didn't want to find out what he would do when he reached her. Without a second thought, she ran toward the archway, ducking beneath the stone pillars and into the small, hidden path beyond. As she moved deeper into the shadows of the arch, the eerie sensation that had been lingering in the air seemed to grow stronger, as if the island itself were watching her, waiting. The path curved, leading her deeper into the heart of the island. After a few minutes, the trees began to thin out, and Anna stumbled into another clearing, this one much larger than the last. What she saw there stopped her dead in her tracks. The ruins of an ancient city sprawled before her. Its architecture was unlike anything she had ever seen. Stone structures, tall and jagged, with strange carvings that seemed to pulse faintly under the dim light. Massive statues lined the edges of the clearing, their faces worn and eroded by centuries of neglect. But their eyes, those eyes, seemed to follow her every movement. The air felt charged, thick with an oppressive energy, as if something ancient, something deeply powerful, was waiting here. But as Anna stood there, she realized she was not alone. A figure stood in the center of the clearing, a woman dressed in white, standing completely still as though she had been there for eternity. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken and distant, but when she spoke, her voice was clear, sharp, like the sound of breaking glass. "You shouldn't have come here," the woman said. "This is an island of eternal night, a place where time itself is lost. You'll never leave." Anna stepped back, confusion and fear bubbling up inside her. What is this place? Who are you?" The woman's lips parted in what could almost be described as a smile, though it held no warmth. "We were once like you, people who came seeking answers. But answers can be dangerous, and sometimes they are buried too deep." Anna's heart skipped a beat. What happened to the others? The passengers from the plane? "They are here," the woman replied, her voice hollow. "But they're no longer who they were. The island takes what it needs, feeds on it, like a parasite. Those who remain are altered." A chill ran down Anna's spine. The man who had attacked her, it wasn't just a survivor. It wasn't just a person. He was something else now. "Then why are you here?" Anna asked, trying to steady her breathing. The woman's eyes flickered to the ruins, to the stone structures that surrounded them. "We are all bound to this place, trapped between life and death, suspended in an eternal twilight. The island doesn't let go, and it will never let you go, either." Anna's thoughts raced. Trapped, the words echoed in her mind. The missing passengers, the wreckage, the strange, hollow-eyed man, it all made sense now. The island wasn't just a place. It was a prison, a place that twisted time, a place where the past and future collided, and where those who came seeking answers were doomed to remain. As the woman's words sank in, Anna realized with growing dread that she wasn't just stranded on a mysterious island. She was stuck in a place that defied all reason and logic, a place where the rules of time, life, and death had no meaning. She turned to leave, but as she did, the shadows around her seemed to shift, to close in. The whispers in the air grew louder, a chorus of voices that tugged at the edges of her consciousness, trying to pull her back toward the center of the ruins. Figures emerged from the shadows, the faces of the missing passengers, but their expressions were blank, their eyes just like the man's, hollow, vacant. The woman in white spoke one final time, her voice both a warning and a promise. "There is no escape. Anna, you will be one of us soon enough." Anna's breath caught in her throat as the figures closed in. She realized she had been running toward an end that she couldn't avoid. The island, with its twisted time and its eternal darkness, was not just a place. It was a force, an ancient entity that trapped souls, one by one, drawing them into its grasp. But before the figures could reach her, she heard something, a distant sound, a roar of thunder, a crack in the air. The storm that had caused the crash had returned. It raged above her, dark clouds swirling as the island trembled under its force. The ground beneath her feet shuddered, and suddenly, the stone structures around her began to crumble. Pieces of ancient architecture fell to the ground with an earth-shaking thud, sending dust and debris flying into the air. The figures hesitated, recoiling from the storm as if they could feel the island's foundations breaking apart. Anna turned and ran. She didn't know if the island would let her escape, or if the storm had simply brought some semblance of chaos to the order of the island's existence. But as she sprinted toward the edge of the ruins, toward the sea, the island's grip on her seemed to loosen, even if just for a moment. The world around her was no longer the oppressive, silent tomb she had found when she awoke. The storm was her only chance, her only way to break free from the island's curse. She had no idea if she was running toward salvation or toward a new kind of doom. But as the dark waters crashed against the shore, the roar of the storm louder now than ever, she knew one thing for certain. The island's night had come to an end, but she didn't know if she could survive the dawn. The storm raged around Anna as she ran, the howling winds whipping against her face and the rain stinging her skin. The sea, once calm, had turned violent, the waves crashing against the jagged rocks like a wild animal trying to break free from its cage. The island seemed to be coming alive with the storm's fury, the air charged with an electric tension that made her feel as if she were caught between two realities, the one she had known and the one that had now taken root in her mind. She barely registered the path beneath her feet, stumbling through the dense undergrowth, branches clawing at her skin as she pushed forward. The ruins, the figures, the woman in white, they all seemed distant now, like a bad dream, fading in the wake of the storm. But there was still something gnawing at her, something pulling her back to the center of the island, urging her to understand the truth of it all. "You will be one of us soon enough." The woman's voice echoed in her mind, sending a shiver down her spine. The missing passengers, their hollow eyes, their lifeless stares. What had happened to them? What had happened to the island's previous inhabitants? Was she doomed to become one of them? The thought was unbearable, but she couldn't let herself succumb to despair. She had to keep moving, had to keep running, because if she stopped, if she let the island swallow her whole, there would be no escape. Her only chance was the storm. The forces of nature, chaotic as they were, felt like her only ally in a place where time and reality had lost all meaning. After what felt like hours of running, her legs aching with exhaustion, Anna finally reached the edge of the island. The shore stretched out before her, the black sand slick with rain, the tumultuous sea crashing violently against the rocks. For the first time, she allowed herself a breath of relief. She had made it to the water, but then, as she looked out into the dark horizon, her stomach sank. There was nothing, no ships, no boats, no signs of civilization. Just the vast, empty expanse of ocean, stretching endlessly in every direction. The storm had stripped away any hope she had of seeing a rescue vessel, any chance of finding safety. She was alone. Suddenly, a sharp cry cut through the noise of the storm. It came from the direction of the ruins. Her heart raced as she spun around, scanning the shoreline. For a moment, there was nothing, but then she saw movement, figures emerging from the shadows of the trees, stepping slowly toward her. The hollow-eyed man, The woman in white. The others. Anna's blood ran cold. She had thought the storm had driven them away, but now they were returning, emerging from the depths of the island like shadows rising from the darkness. They were not human anymore, not truly. They were something else entirely, bound to the island, trapped in its eternal night. The man was the first to speak, his voice raspy, like a broken whisper. "It's too late. You can't run." Anna stumbled backward, panic surging through her chest. Her mind raced for any escape, any way to break free. But the island had already begun to claim her. There was no getting away now. The woman in white stepped forward, her pale face now illuminated by the flashes of lightning overhead. Her eyes, those empty, soulless eyes, seemed to see right through Anna. "The island is calling you," she said softly. "It always calls, and in the end, it never lets go." "Why?" Anna managed to choke out. "Why are you doing this? What is this place?" The woman smiled, a cold, empty smile, and raised her hand as if reaching for the storm itself. "This is the island of eternal night, a place of ancient power, where time and death are but illusions. Those who come are drawn here, trapped in its web. You think you can escape, but you can't. Not once the island has claimed you." Anna's heart pounded in her chest. Claimed you. She couldn't let herself believe it, but the truth was undeniable. The island wasn't just a place, it was alive. It had a will of its own, a dark force that bent time and reality to its own desires. She wasn't here by chance. She had been drawn in, just like the others before her. And now, she was running out of time. But as the figures closed in, something inside Anna shifted. She could feel the storm's power, the violent crackle of electricity in the air, the energy surging through the very ground beneath her feet. There had to be a way to fight back. The island's power was dark and twisted, but it wasn't invincible. Nothing was. Her eyes darted to the sea. In the distance, the storm's fury had churned up massive waves, but there was something else. A flicker of light, a shadow cutting through the water. A boat, a silhouette of someone coming toward her. She didn't know if it was real or just another hallucination born from the madness of the island, but it didn't matter. The storm had given her a window of opportunity, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. She turned and ran toward the water, her feet pounding against the slick sand. "Help!" she screamed, though she wasn't sure if anyone would hear her over the roar of the storm. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. The figures, the twisted souls of the island, shouted after her, their voices distorted by the storm. But Anna kept running. She was almost there, just a few more steps. Then, something unexpected happened. A flash of bright light cut through the darkness, blinding her for a moment. The ground beneath her feet trembled violently, as if the island itself was resisting her escape. And for a heartbeat, she thought she felt something, a shift in the air, a crack in the fabric of the island's dark hole. In that instant, everything seemed to freeze. The wind stilled, the waves paused in mid-crash. The figures around her stopped, their hollow eyes staring, waiting. And then the island itself seemed to react. The storm, the chaos, the unnatural darkness, it all began to unravel. As if her defiance had awakened something within the island. Something old, something powerful. The earth trembled, and the air grew thick with a low hum, a pulse of energy that resonated deep in her bones. Anna's heart raced. Was this it? Was this the breaking point? The boat came closer, and as it neared, Anna could make out a figure at the helm, someone who had come to rescue her. But the island was still fighting, still holding on to its secrets, its power. Anna had one last chance. The light grew brighter. The island seemed to shudder, as if it were alive, torn between its ancient hunger and the forces now working against it. And in that moment, Anna realized what she had to do. To break free, to escape the island's grip, she would have to face its true heart, its core, the source of its eternal night. But time was running out. The boat drew closer, its silhouette barely visible in the storm's wild fury. Anna's heart pounded, each step toward the shore like a final plea for escape. But as she ran, she could feel the island pushing back, as though it didn't want her to leave. The ground beneath her feet trembled again, the distant figures moving closer, drawn toward her in eerie unison. The man with the hollow eyes, the woman in white, and the others, the island's forgotten souls, were closing in on her with relentless precision. Asterisk, I can't let them catch me. I can't be one of them. Asterisk. The thought spurred her forward, and she pushed harder, her legs burning with exhaustion. She was so close to the water now, just a few more steps, but the island was starting to fight back with everything it had. The dark sky above cracked with an unnatural thunder, and the ground beneath her feet began to crack, deep fissures splitting the earth. Anna stopped for a moment, panic clawing at her throat. The ground was breaking apart, and the figures behind her were no longer moving at a slow pace. They were running too, their movements jerky and unnatural, like marionettes being pulled by unseen strings. Their eyes were locked on her, and she could feel their presence pulling at her, urging her to stop, to surrender. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. The boat was closer now, its engine roaring against the wind and waves. She could see the man at the helm, a figure wrapped in a thick coat, his face partially hidden by a hood, but the hope of rescue shone through. He was coming for her, but would he get there in time? Anna turned back toward the figures closing in on her, their hollow eyes now more menacing than ever. They were no longer just figures from the island's cursed past. They were its guardians, its enforcers. If she didn't act now, they would drag her back into the darkness, into the eternal night that had trapped so many before her. She glanced down at the sand, where the strange symbols on the ground were now glowing faintly, their ancient markings pulsing like a heartbeat. The island was alive with power, but so was she. The storm, the unraveling of the island's curse, it had given her a chance. She could feel the energy beneath her feet, the remnants of the ancient force that had bound her to this place. But what did she have to do? What was the final key to breaking free? Suddenly, it hit her. The island wasn't just holding her here. It was feeding on her, feeding on the souls it trapped. She had to cut that tie, sever the bond that had tethered her to the cursed land. The boat wasn't her way out. The island itself had to release her. She reached down, her fingers trembling, and grabbed a handful of sand. The symbols beneath her feet flared brightly as her hand brushed over them. She wasn't sure what she was doing, but something in her gut told her to connect with the energy, to channel it through her body. As she stood there, holding the sand in her palm, the ground beneath her feet shifted again, and the figures stopped in their tracks. They were still moving toward her, but they were slower now, more hesitant, as though something was resisting them. Anna closed her eyes. Focusing on the power, she could feel surging through her body. She took a deep breath and whispered, barely audible above the storm, "Release me." The words echoed in the air, and for a moment, everything went still. The wind stopped howling, the rain ceased, and the island itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, the storm returned, but not the same storm. The dark clouds parted slightly, and a beam of strange, silver light pierced the sky, falling onto the beach in front of her. The figures that had been chasing her recoiled, their forms flickering, as if the light was burning them. The air buzzed with an unearthly energy, and Anna realized that the island, in its ancient hunger, had been feeding on the light, on the souls it trapped. Now she was feeding it back. With a final push, she hurled the handful of sand toward the beam of light. It exploded in a flash of bright, blinding energy, and in that moment, everything went dark. When Anna opened her eyes again, the storm had disappeared. The air was still, and the sky above was a deep, pale blue. The ocean was calm, the waves lapping gently against the shore. But the island felt different now, emptier, quieter. The weight of its presence no longer pressed down on her, suffocating the air. It had loosened its grip. The figures were gone, the hollow-eyed man and the woman in white. Nothing but shadows that seemed to have vanished with the storm. The island was no longer the island of eternal night. Anna slowly stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her. She had done it. The bond had been severed. She wasn't bound to the island anymore. In the distance, the boat was still there, closer now. It was real. A figure waved at her, from the helm. She hadn't imagined it. She didn't hesitate. She ran toward the water, the sand no longer feeling like a trap beneath her feet. As she reached the edge, the boat's engine roared louder, and the man at the helm reached out a hand. Anna climbed aboard, her hands shaking, her chest heaving with relief. The man didn't say anything at first. He just helped her settle into the sea, and they both turned toward the horizon, where the sun was rising, casting a golden glow across the ocean. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse, almost a prayer. "You don't know how much I needed this." The man finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "The island doesn't let many leave, but you were stronger than most. You broke its hold." As they sailed away, Anna looked back at the island one last time. It was still there, but it felt different, emptied of its dark power. The curse had been broken, and the island, no longer a prison, slowly began to fade into the distance. And as the boat cut through the calm waters, Anna realized that she wasn't just escaping the island. She was escaping a part of herself, one that had been trapped there, caught in the island's eternal night. Now, she was free, but deep in her heart, she knew the island's curse would never truly let go. Its darkness would always linger in the back of her mind, a haunting reminder of what it had taken and what it had given. The boat sped across the calm waters, the rhythmic hum of the engine a steady, grounding sound against the quiet solitude that had overtaken Anna. The island, now a fading memory on the horizon, still weighed heavily on her heart, but she forced herself to look away. Her body ached from the ordeal, the exhaustion of everything she had endured pressing against her like a leaden weight. As the boat cut through the still water, she allowed herself a moment of peace. The sun, now fully risen, cast a golden light across the ocean, and the faint orange glow stretched out before her. She closed her eyes, breathing in deeply, allowing the fresh, salt-laden air to fill her lungs. It was over. She had made it out, and the island's dark grip had been severed. But as the boat moved farther from the island, something gnawed at her. Something unsettled her deep inside. It was the way the storm had vanished, the way the island had changed, as if she had triggered something. Had she truly broken free? Or had she simply set something worse in motion? "How did you know about the island?" Anna asked the man beside her. He was steady at the helm, his face weathered but calm, his eyes always looking forward. He hadn't said much since pulling her onto the boat, but he had spared her the comfort of silence, something she was grateful for. He looked at her briefly, but his eyes quickly returned to the horizon. "I've heard stories. Most people think it's a legend, a myth, but there are those of us who know better. Who are you?" Anna pressed, curiosity tugging at her. The man hesitated, his lips tightening slightly, but then he spoke. "A researcher. I've been studying the island for years, trying to understand it. Most people are too afraid to go near it. Those that do either never come back or never speak of what they've seen." Anna's pulse quickened. "You knew it was real?" The man nodded grimly. "I knew it wasn't just a story. The island is not like any other place on Earth. People have tried to study it, but there's a force there, something ancient and alive. It twists time, reality, it makes its own rules. Once you're part of it, you're tied to it in ways you can't understand until you're trapped." Anna's thoughts began to spiral. The woman in white, the hollow-eyed figures, the strange sense of being pulled toward the center of the island. It all made sense now. The island had been watching her, pulling at her, drawing her in for some unknown purpose. The man's voice broke her thoughts. "You've broken its hold, but it won't forget you. No place like that ever does. If it doesn't take you, it'll keep trying, and it won't stop until it gets what it wants." She swallowed hard, trying to push the fear down. "What does it want?" "That," the man said, "is something no one has ever been able to answer. Some say it's a place for souls, lost, wandering, waiting. Others say it's more like a prison, a place to trap people who stumble into its grasp, keep them for eternity. It feeds on their fears, their darkness. You saw it, didn't you? The way it took over the others. They became part of the island." Anna shuddered, the memories of the hollow-eyed man and the twisted figures coming back in full force. She had seen what they had become, and she knew now she could never forget. But you escaped, the man said, his voice softer now. You broke the cycle. It's never easy, but it's possible. You've got strength. The reassurance in his voice was the first she had heard since the crash, and she let herself believe it, even for a moment. Still, doubt gnawed at her. The island's darkness hadn't just disappeared. There was a part of it still lingering, a feeling that would follow her for the rest of her life. Could she ever truly escape? Thank you, she said quietly, for coming for me, for helping me. The man didn't respond right away, his hands steady at the wheel. Don't thank me yet. There's more to this than you realize. The island may have released its hold on you, but the world you're going back to, it's not the same anymore. And neither are you. Anna frowned. What do you mean? The island isn't just some forgotten place. It's connected to something much older, much larger. It's part of a larger web, an ancient network, perhaps. It calls to certain people, those who have a connection to its energy. And the thing about the island, Anna, once you've been there, it marks you. She felt a cold shiver run through her, the last vestiges of the island's influence sinking into her bones. Marked, she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned his gaze to her, his eyes dark and serious. Once you crossed its threshold, you become part of its story. And like the others, you'll never truly be free of it. You'll always carry a piece of it with you. You can leave the island, but the island will never leave you. As the boat sailed further from the island, Anna looked back one last time. The island was still visible in the distance, a jagged silhouette against the morning sky. Its dark shapes, the ruined structures, the twisted trees, everything she had just survived. But now, in the distance, it was beginning to look like nothing more than a fading memory. However, the knot in her chest remained, an echo of the island's power. No matter how far she sailed, no matter how many miles separated her from it, the island was still in her. Its darkness, its whispers, they would follow her always. It was a curse, a weight she would carry for the rest of her life. But one thing was clear, the island had changed her. Not just in how it had nearly consumed her, but in how she would see the world now. There were things beyond what the eye could see, places where the rules of life and death didn't apply. There were ancient forces at play, and the island was only one of many. Anna took a deep breath, the ocean breeze cutting through her hair. Her journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. She had escaped the island, but the questions were just beginning. And as she gazed out over the water, the horizon stretching before her, she realized she was ready to confront them. Whatever came next, she wouldn't be running anymore. As the boat sailed further from the island, Anna sat in silence, her thoughts swirling. The ocean stretched out before her, endless and peaceful, but it felt like a veil hiding the secrets of the world beneath. The island was still fresh in her mind, its twisted trees, its dark power, its eerie whispers. But as the boat cut through the calm waters, she felt a strange sense of finality, even though a part of her knew that this was far from over. The man beside her hadn't spoken for a while. He seemed to be watching the horizon as much as she was, his hands steady on the wheel. Anna, though grateful for his help, couldn't help but feel a pang of distrust. Who was he really? How did he know so much about the island? His cryptic warnings about the island's mark, about what lay ahead, had only deepened her unease. After some time, the man broke the silence. You're not the only one who's been touched by it, he said quietly, his voice low, as if the words carried weight. The island doesn't just affect those who step on its shores. It finds ways to influence the world outside its borders. Anna looked at him, her brow furrowed. What do you mean? The island's power, he continued, it's connected to something much older, something bigger. I've been tracking it for years, looking for signs, searching for its origins. And after everything you've been through, after what you've seen, I think it's time you knew the truth. The weight of his words hung in the air, and Anna felt an inexplicable urge to understand more. She had already lived through a nightmare, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the island had been only the beginning. You've been tracking it? She asked cautiously, trying to make sense of everything. Why? What are you looking for? The man turned to face her, his expression serious. The island is only one piece of a larger puzzle. There are others like it, hidden in plain sight, scattered across the world. They're linked, you see. Each one has a different power, but they all share one thing. They hold the key to something ancient, something humanity isn't ready to understand. Anna felt her pulse quicken. What are you talking about? What key? What's hidden? The man didn't answer right away. His eyes shifted, scanning the horizon once more, as if searching for something in the distance. When he spoke again, his voice was low and urgent. The key to unlocking the power of the universe, he said. A force so old, it predates written history. These places, these islands, these ruins, they were built to protect something, but not just any ordinary thing. The secrets they guard are the last remnants of a civilization far older than anything we know. They're linked to a network of ancient power, one that can change the world. If the wrong people find it, we're all doomed. Anna's heart thudded in her chest. You're saying there are more places like the island? More islands? The man nodded grimly. Yes, and they're waking up. The storm you experienced, the way the island reacted, it wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a trigger. The islands are connected to each other, and when one awakens, the others feel it. That's why I've been searching. There are more out there, waiting to be uncovered, and they are more dangerous than you can imagine. Then why didn't you tell me this earlier? Anna demanded, her voice sharp. Why didn't you warn me? The man's gaze softened, but only slightly, because I wasn't sure you were ready to hear it. The truth about the islands, about their power, is too much for most people. But you felt it. The island changed you, didn't it? Anna paused. It had changed her. She could feel it in her bones. The island's darkness still lingered inside her, pulsing, twisting, never fully fading. It was as if a part of it had attached itself to her, and no matter how far she ran, it would never let go. I don't know what to believe anymore, she whispered, her voice heavy with the weight of everything she had experienced. The man gave a solemn nod. I know, but you'll have to trust me, Anna. The truth is more complicated than you realize, and it's not just about escaping the island. There's a larger force at play, and if we don't stop it, the world could fall into chaos. She looked at him, her mind reeling with everything he had said. Her escape from the island had felt like a victory, but now it seemed like the real battle was only just beginning. She had broken free, but the island's curse had followed her, and she was tangled in something far deeper than she could have ever imagined. Where do we go from here? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping back into her chest. The man glanced at her, his expression unreadable. There's a place we need to visit, a place where we can uncover more about the islands, where the network of power begins. But be warned, Anna, once we go there, there's no turning back. The world you knew will be gone forever. She thought for a moment, the weight of his words settling in. Then, with a steady breath, she nodded. I'm ready. The man didn't say anything more, but his eyes softened, a glimmer of respect in them. As the boat continued across the vast ocean, the two of them remained in silence, knowing that they were heading towards something far more dangerous than anything they had encountered before. And as the island disappeared from view, Anna realized that her life, her reality, was now irrevocably changed. The truth was out there, waiting for them to find it. And the mysteries of the islands, their ancient power, and their dark secrets would follow her every step of the way. The boat sliced through the waves as the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting an eerie twilight across the vast ocean. Anna sat on the edge of the boat, her eyes fixed on the ever-growing distance between herself and the island that had nearly consumed her. It was hard to shake the image of its twisted trees, the hollow-eyed figures, and the terrifying storm that had torn through her life like a nightmare made real. She had escaped, but the fear that had settled deep in her bones hadn't disappeared. The man at the helm remained silent, his grip firm on the wheel, his gaze unwavering on the path ahead. Anna could feel his presence beside her, a silent guardian, but also a reminder of how little she truly understood about what was happening. The truth about the islands, the force they represented, and the ancient power they guarded was only beginning to unfold. Her escape from the island had been a victory, but one that had come at a price. She could still feel the pull of the island's curse, like a dark thread woven through her thoughts. Something had changed in her, something she couldn't name, but it wasn't just a fear. It was a sense of responsibility, a weight she had never known before. "I know you're still processing all this," the man said suddenly, his voice low, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. "But I need you to understand something. These islands, the places we're looking for, they're not just about power. They're about balance. And without it, everything begins to unravel." Anna glanced at him, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean by balance?" He sighed, his fingers tightening slightly on the wheel. The ancient civilizations that built these islands didn't just seek power. They understood something far more profound. The islands are part of a network that connects everything. Time, life, death, energy. They protect the world's fragile balance. When one island awakens, it triggers changes in the others. That's why the storm on the island, the storm you encountered, it was just the beginning. The balance is shifting and the power is waking. Anna shook her head, trying to make sense of it. "So what you're saying is that the islands aren't just physical places. They're connected to something much larger? And if they're awakening, that's a bad thing?" The man's gaze remained focused on the water. "Yes, the power they guard is ancient, far older than anything we know. But if that power is misused, or worse, if someone taps into it, everything could fall apart. That's why we need to find the others. And we need to do it before someone else does." Anna's heart pounded as she processed his words. A network of islands connected by ancient power, all tied to the fate of the world. It sounded like something out of a myth, something she had read about in stories. But she could feel the truth of it in her chest. She had seen it in the island's grip, in the way it had twisted her reality. She couldn't let that power fall into the wrong hands. "Who else is looking for these islands?" she asked, her voice sharp, a new urgency rising in her. The man's lips twisted into a grim smile. "The wrong people. People who would use the power for their own gain. They're dangerous, Senna. I've been tracking them for years, and I've seen what they're capable of. They don't care about the balance. All they care about is control." She swallowed hard. "And you think we can stop them?" "We don't have a choice," he said quietly. "If we don't, the island's curse will be the least of our problems." The night was falling fast now. The sky streaked with purple and orange as the boat sliced through the water toward an undisclosed destination. The man, whose name Anna still didn't know, had been careful with his words, offering just enough to keep her on edge, but not enough to make her fully understand what they were facing. But now, with the island behind them, she could feel the weight of the path ahead, the danger they were walking into, and the stakes of what they were trying to prevent. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the questions that burned in her mind. The man glanced at her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "There's a place," he said, his voice low, almost like a warning. "A hidden library. It's said to hold the answers to everything. The origins of the islands, the purpose of the network, and the key to unlocking the power within them. But it's not easy to find. It's guarded, and the people who know about it aren't exactly friendly." Anna nodded. She was used to the unknown by now, but the weight of this new task felt heavier than anything she had ever faced. The library, the knowledge it contained, it could be the key to understanding everything, to stopping the destruction that loomed on the horizon. But it was also a dangerous pursuit. The man's words had been clear. Whoever else was looking for the islands wanted them for power, and they would stop at nothing to get what they sought. The boat continued its steady course across the water, the darkness creeping in like an omen. As the lights of the distant shore began to appear, Anna's mind raced. The island had marked her, and now she was heading into the heart of something much larger, something that could either save the world or destroy. And there was no turning back. The boat gradually slowed as they neared the shore. The distant outline of land grew sharper, and Anna could see the faint glow of lights up ahead. A small coastal town that looked almost too ordinary to be the setting for the next step of her harrowing journey. But she knew better. Nothing was ordinary anymore. Not since the island. Not since everything had changed. The man at the helm finally spoke, breaking the silence. "This is where we part ways with the boat. The library is inland, hidden within a series of caves that no one but a few know about. I've made arrangements to keep us out of sight. The less attention we draw, the better." Anna nodded, the weight of his words settling in. She had no idea what awaited them, but she was ready to move forward. She had no choice. Every step had led her here, to a place where the secrets of the islands, of the ancient power they contain, would either be revealed or sealed forever. As the boat gently pulled up onto the shore, Anna stepped off, her legs shaky from the long journey. The man quickly secured the boat and gestured for her to follow him. They walked through the darkened town, the cobbled streets eerily quiet, the buildings old and weathered, but the air still warm with the scent of salt water. It felt like the calm before the storm. They didn't speak much as they moved, but Anna's mind was racing. The man hadn't told her his name yet, which only increased her sense of unease. But despite the uncertainty, she knew one thing for sure: he was right. Whoever else was searching for the island's power would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. The storm she had survived was just the first ripple in what could become a tidal wave of destruction. After a while, they reached the edge of the town, where the last streetlights faded into the shadows of the forest. The man led Anna through dense trees, the air growing thick and heavy with the scent of moss and earth. As they moved deeper into the woods, Anna felt the familiar unease creeping up her spine. It wasn't the forest itself. It was the sense that something else was watching them, waiting. Finally, after what felt like hours, they arrived at a cave entrance, obscured by hanging vines and thick foliage. It was barely noticeable, hidden in plain sight. The man stopped before the cave and turned to Anna, his face now serious. "This is it," he said quietly. "Inside, you'll find the knowledge we need. But be prepared. There are people who have already been here. They're not friendly, and they know we're coming." Anna's heart quickened. "Who are they? What are they after?" "People like me," the man said grimly. "But their intentions are darker. They want to control the power of the islands, twist it to their will. They're willing to kill anyone who stands in their way." The man hesitated, his gaze turning toward the cave. "I need to tell you something, Anna. What you're about to uncover, what you'll find in there isn't just knowledge. It's power, the kind of power that can change everything." Anna swallowed hard. "And you think we can use it to stop them?" "I hope so," he said. "But we'll need to be ready. There's no turning back once we enter. The library doesn't just hold books. It holds the truth, and the truth can be dangerous." With that, the man pushed aside the vines, revealing the dark entrance to the cave. A cool draft swept out from inside, and the faint smell of earth and old stone filled the air. Anna could feel the weight of what lay beyond, the uncertainty and fear settling in her chest. But this was what she had to do. She had no choice. "Let's go," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. They entered the cave, the darkness swallowing them whole as they moved deeper into the heart of the earth. The path was narrow, the walls slick with moisture, and the air thick with a strange tension. As they went further, the faintest glimmer of light appeared ahead, illuminating the path just enough to reveal the stone floor, covered with ancient carvings. The deeper they went, the more the air seemed to hum with energy, a low vibration that pulsed in her chest. She could feel the island's influence even here, beneath the earth. It wasn't just the memories or the fear. It was as if the power of the island had followed her, seeped into the very stones of the cave. Finally, they came to a large, open chamber. At the center of the chamber was a massive stone pedestal, covered in intricate carvings. Upon it lay an ancient book, its pages yellowed with age. The air around the book felt thick with power, a palpable energy that made Anna's skin tingle. But before they could move closer, the sound of footsteps echoed through the cave, loud and purposeful. The man stiffened, his hand going to a small knife at his side. Anna turned toward the sound, her heart pounding. "Stay close," the man whispered. A figure stepped out of the shadows, a tall, imposing woman with cold, calculating eyes. She wore dark clothing, a coat that seemed to blend into the shadows. Her gaze flicked over Anna, assessing, appraising. "So, you've come to take what doesn't belong to you," the woman said, her voice smooth but filled with menace. Anna's pulse quickened. "Who are you?" The woman smirked, her lips curling into a slight smile. I'm someone who knows exactly what the islands can do, and I'm here to ensure that no one gets in my way. The man beside Anna tensed, stepping protectively in front of her. We don't want trouble. We're here for the knowledge. The woman laughed, the sound echoing off the walls of the cave. Knowledge? You think that's all this is? The islands are more than knowledge. They are power, pure, ancient power. And you're trespassing. Anna's eyes widened. You're one of them, aren't you? The people who seek the island's power for themselves. The woman's eyes glinted with a dangerous light. You're smarter than you look, but it's too late for you. The power of the islands is already in motion, and you're not going to stop it. Anna's heart raced, her mind whirling with the gravity of the situation. They weren't just fighting to protect the island's secrets anymore. They were fighting to stop the destruction that could unfold if the wrong people got their hands on that power. With a sudden movement, the woman reached into her coat, drawing a sharp blade, its edge glinting in the dim light. Move aside, she said, her voice laced with threat. I won't warn you again. Anna didn't hesitate. There was no more running, no more hiding. They had come too far, and she was prepared to do whatever it took to stop this woman, to stop the chaos she represented. The woman's cold gaze locked onto Anna, her blade poised and gleaming in the dim light. The air in the cave felt thick, charged with tension, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Anna's pulse quickened, her mind racing for a solution, anything to stop the impending clash. The man beside her didn't flinch, his stance solid, but Anna could see the flicker of wariness in his eyes. He knew how dangerous these people were, and the woman was no exception. We don't have to fight, Anna said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear twisting in her chest. We're not after the power. You don't have to stop us. The woman's lips curled into a smile that held no word. Oh, but you do, she said softly. You see, the power of the islands isn't for people like you. People who think they can walk away unscathed. You've stirred something, and now it's coming for you. For all of you. Anna's breath caught in her throat. The island's curse had always been a haunting force, but the woman's words made it clear. It wasn't just the island they were up against. There were far more dangerous forces at play, forces that were tied to the ancient power the islands guarded. You think you can control it? The woman continued, her voice dripping with condescension. That knowledge is dangerous, Anna. Once you know what's hidden, you can't unsee it. You can't undo what the islands have started. Her words were a challenge, and Anna could feel the weight of them. The island, the ancient power, it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about understanding the force that connected everything, the one that had begun awakening with the storm, pulling Anna back into its grasp. Anna took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The pedestal in the center of the chamber called to her. The book, the truth. Everything she had fought to uncover was right in front of her. But she wasn't sure if she was ready to face what would come with that knowledge. The man beside her moved slightly, positioning himself between Anna and the woman, his voice low and dangerous. We don't want to fight you, but if we must, we will. The woman's eyes glinted with amusement. You think you can stand against me, she said, taking a slow step forward. You haven't even begun to understand what's at stake. But go ahead, try to stop me. I'm curious to see how far you'll go. Anna's mind raced. There had to be another way. Fighting, running, it wasn't the answer. The island's power had been pulling at her ever since she set foot on it. It was like a living thing, a force beyond anything she had imagined. But if she could learn to control it, to understand it, maybe she could stop this woman and everything she represented. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed to get to that book. She needed to understand what the ancient knowledge could offer before the woman or anyone else could use it for their own gain. Stay back, Anna said, her voice firm now. I'm not leaving here without the truth. The woman's eyes narrowed, the blade still held tightly in her hand, but Anna could see the shift in her expression, a flicker of something darker, more dangerous. You don't understand, she hissed. You never will. With a sudden, sharp motion, the woman lunged toward Anna, her blade slashing through the air with deadly precision. Anna barely managed to leap backward, her heart pounding, the sound of the blade cutting through the air ringing in her ears. The man at her side stepped forward to intercept, his body a barrier between Anna and the woman. There was a flash of steel as he blocked the strike, their weapons clashing in a shower of sparks. The woman hissed, stepping back, her gaze now fixed on the man. "You're a fool," she spat. "You think you can protect her? You have no idea what you're dealing with." Anna watched as the man and the woman circled each other, their movements fluid and precise. But the woman's speed was unnerving. She moved like a shadow, her strikes almost too quick to follow. The man, despite his strength, was forced to retreat with every blow. Anna's heart raced as she backed toward the pedestal, her eyes never leaving the woman. She could feel the power of the island radiating from the book in the center of the room. It was calling to her. She wasn't sure how, but she knew what she had to do. As the woman made another lunge at the man, Anna's eyes locked on the book. The pedestal seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat, the carvings glowing faintly in the dim light. The moment the woman's focus shifted to the man, Anna took her chance. She grabbed the book, her fingers brushing against the cold leather binding. The instant she touched it, the air in the cave seemed to thrum with energy, and the woman's expression faltered, her eyes narrowing in realization. "No," the woman hissed, her voice sharp with fury. "You don't understand what you've just done." The cave seemed to shake, the walls vibrating as if something was waking up deep beneath them. Anna could feel the surge of power running through her, like a flood of ancient knowledge pouring into her veins. Her vision blurred, and she struggled to maintain her footing as the book's power seemed to surge through her. The man, realizing what had happened, rushed toward Anna, his face grim. "Anna, we need to get out of here. Now!" But the woman wasn't done. She lunged once again, her blade aimed straight for Anna. In that instant, the book seemed to respond to the threat, a pulse of energy erupting from it, sending the woman flying backward, her body slamming against the cave wall with a sickening thud. The power of the book was overwhelming, and Anna felt herself swept away by it. The woman groaned, struggling to rise, her eyes wild with anger. "You don't know what you've unleashed. You can't control it." Anna's breath came in ragged gasps as the energy of the book coursed through her. The cave was alive now, the symbols on the walls pulsing with a light that seemed to come from within the stones themselves. The island's power was no longer just a dark force. It was part of her now. She could feel it swirling inside her, both terrifying and intoxicating. "I can control it," Anna said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I will control it." The woman's expression twisted with rage. "You fool! You have no idea what you've done. The island's power is a force of nature. It can't be controlled. You'll destroy everything." But Anna knew something the woman didn't. She had the knowledge now, the key to unlocking the truth about the islands, about their power, and about how to stop the chaos from consuming the world. With a final surge of energy, Anna raised the book high, the light growing brighter, casting a brilliant glow across the cave. The woman's screams were drowned out as the cave seemed to collapse inward, the ancient power within the book tearing through the air, unraveling the force that had trapped her and everyone else on the island. The truth was hers now, and with it, the power to change the world. The cave pulsed with light, the air thick with the raw, crackling energy that had erupted from the book. Anna stood at the center of it, her hands trembling as the ancient knowledge surged through her. The walls of the cave seemed to be alive, the glowing symbols shifting in time with the rhythmic pulse of the island's power. The woman, now sprawled against the wall, gritted her teeth, trying to regain her footing, but she was clearly disoriented, struggling to rise. Her clothes were singed, and her face was a mask of fury and disbelief. She couldn't understand what had just happened. Anna's heart pounded, her breath shallow as she held the book in both hands. She had expected the power to be overwhelming, but nothing could have prepared her for the flood of ancient memories, forgotten truths, and terrifying visions that now clouded her mind. The knowledge was not just contained in words. It was an experience, a rush of vivid images and sounds, of distant voices whispering across time. The woman's voice broke through the haze. "You think you can control it. don't you? She spat, her voice thick with venom. You think the book will save you, that it will save the world. You're wrong. Anna blinked, trying to focus through the overwhelming flood of energy. She had to stay calm. She had to understand what was happening. No one can control it, the woman hissed, struggling to her feet, her movements slow and deliberate. The island is a force beyond us, beyond any of us. And now you've unleashed it. You've become part of it. Anna's grip on the book tightened. She could feel it, the power surging through her, feeding her every thought, every movement. She was no longer just a survivor of the island. She was now an extension of it, a vessel for the ancient knowledge and power that had been locked away for centuries. She wasn't sure if it was the book that had made her stronger or if it was the island's curse that had marked her forever. But one thing was clear. She couldn't turn back now. The island had changed her, and the power of its secrets flowed through her veins. There was no escaping it, no undoing it. The woman took a step toward Anna, her eyes wild with anger. You don't understand what you've done. The balance is broken. There's no going back. You've opened a door, and now something will come through. The power of the islands is meant to remain hidden, to protect the world. But you, she spat, you're going to bring the end of everything. Anna's pulse quickened, the woman's words striking a nerve. She didn't understand. Not fully, but she felt the weight of the truth in her bones. The islands, the knowledge they guarded, the power. They weren't just part of an ancient past. They were part of the future, a future Anna had a role in shaping. You're wrong, Anna said, her voice steady despite the fear churning inside her. The islands were meant to protect the world, and I'm going to make sure they do. The woman's eyes narrowed, her lip curling in disbelief. You can't make it stop, Anna. You can't stop the power. It's already been set into motion. There's nothing you can do. No one can control the storm that's coming. Anna looked at her, her eyes hard. I'm not controlling it. I'm guiding it. The knowledge of the islands is meant to be used, not hidden away. It's time the world knew what's coming. A tremor ran through the cave, a deep vibration that seemed to come from the very core of the earth. The woman stumbled back, her eyes wide with fear. No, you can't. Anna didn't respond. She didn't need to. The power she had unlocked had started to reach out beyond the cave. The ancient energy that the islands had protected for so long was awakening, and she could feel it deep within her, flowing like a river, unstoppable and undeniable. The man who had guided her here, the one who had been silent for so long, finally spoke. His voice was calm, but there was an edge of urgency to it. We have to go. Now! Anna turned to him, confusion clouding her mind. What's happening? The island, he said, his voice strained. It's not just a place. It's a living force. The knowledge you've unlocked is too much for this world to handle. If we don't stop it, if we don't get out of here now, everything you've uncovered will tear the world apart. Anna looked back at the woman, whose expression was a mixture of rage and fear. The island's power is too dangerous, the man continued. You can't control it alone. You have to get away. Anna, you have to let it go. But Anna didn't know if she could. The power that flowed through her felt like a part of her now, and the idea of letting it slip away was unimaginable. She had come so far, and she knew the truth. The world had to understand what the islands guarded, what they were hiding. But as the tremors in the cave grew stronger, as the ancient power seemed to surge through the walls, Anna realized he was right. She couldn't contain it. She couldn't wield it alone. It was too much. With a final, regretful glance at the book, Anna stepped away, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what she was leaving behind. The woman, still glaring at her, didn't move. The man pulled her toward the exit, urging her to leave before it was too late. As they made their way out of the cave, the tremors intensified, and the air seemed to crackle with raw energy. The ground shook violently beneath their feet, and for a moment, Anna thought the entire cave would collapse in on itself. But they made it to the mouth of the cave, and as they emerged into the cool night air, the world seemed to hold its breath. The storm that had once raged over the island was now nothing more than a faint whisper on the wind. The island, its power now awakened, seemed to rest, as if holding its cards close to its chest. Anna looked back at the cave entrance, her mind racing. The power was still there, pulsing just beneath the surface of her thoughts. But for now, the world was safe. The balance, however fragile, had been preserved for now. But as she glanced at the man beside her, she realized something. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The cave trembled as Anna, the man, and the woman emerged into the cold night air. The ancient power, awakened by the touch of the book, still crackled beneath the surface of the earth, a tangible force that hummed in the air around them. The island felt different now, its darkness no longer hidden, its secrets exposed to the world, but still holding its power tightly within. Anna's heart raced, the weight of the choices she had made sinking into her bones. She had come here seeking answers, but what she had uncovered was more than she had ever expected. The islands, each one a part of a much larger, ancient network, were not simply repositories of forgotten knowledge. They were guardians of something far older, something dangerous. The balance between life and death, the living world and the otherworldly, had always been fragile, but now that balance was on the brink of destruction. The woman who had confronted them in the cave was still on the ground, her eyes burning with anger and something deeper fear. Anna's mind flashed to the last words she had spoken. You can't control it. The island had marked her, it called to her, and now she understood why. The power wasn't just in the book. It was inside her, bound to her, woven into the fabric of who she was. The moment she had touched the book, she had become part of something much larger than herself. The man, his face grim, turned to Anna. It's not over. You know that, don't you? She nodded, her chest tight with the weight of his words. The woman hadn't been wrong. The power had been unleashed, but it was far from under control. There were others who would stop at nothing to claim it, to twist it to their will. And as much as Anna wished she could return to the life she had before the island, she knew there was no turning back. The islands had chosen her, and their story was far from finished. I know, Anna whispered, her voice barely audible, but I'm not going to let them destroy everything. The man's expression softened slightly, but there was an unreadable tension in his eyes. You've already made the hardest choice. The next steps will be even harder. Anna turned her gaze toward the horizon. The storm had dissipated, leaving behind an eerie calm. The stars above twinkled, distant and cold, as if watching from a far-off realm. The island was quiet now, but she could still feel its pulse deep within her. It was waiting, watching, but for what? We need to find the others, the man said, breaking her thoughts. We can't do this alone. If we're going to stop them, we need to gather the pieces. We need to understand what the islands really are, what they were built for. Anna glanced at him, the weight of his words sinking in. The knowledge we unlocked. It's too dangerous, isn't it? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked over his shoulder at the woman, who was still on the ground, recovering from their encounter. She had been too close to them, too close to the power Anna had unlocked. Her anger was palpable, but there was something else in her eyes, something that looked like desperation. She's not the only one who will come for us, the man said, his voice cold. Others will be after the book. After you. They won't stop until they get what they want. Anna nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. The power wasn't just dangerous to her. It was dangerous to the world. It was a power that could alter the fabric of reality itself. And the longer she carried it, the harder it would be to keep control. I'll do whatever it takes, Anna said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming fear that lingered in her chest. I won't let them use this power for destruction. We'll stop them together. The man didn't reply, but the faintest hint of approval flickered in his eyes. He turned toward the road that led into the forest. Let's move. We can't stay here. We need to regroup and figure out our next move. As Anna followed him, she felt the weight of the island's influence settle deeper within her. It wasn't just knowledge that she had unlocked. It was a call, a purpose. The islands were waiting for something, and Anna now had the key. But with that power came the responsibility to protect it. And if she failed, if she let it fall into the wrong hands, the consequences would be catastrophic. The woman who had confronted them in the cave, the one who had tried to take the power for herself, was no longer an immediate threat. But her words echoed in Anna's mind. Asterisk, you can't control it. You'll destroy everything. Asterisk. Anna's stomach twisted with the uncertainty of the path ahead. She didn't know what the future held, or if she would be able to stop the storm that was coming. But she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't walk away from this. The world was changing, and she was part of that change now. Whatever came next, she would face it head on. As they moved deeper into the night, the weight of the book in her hands felt heavier than ever. But Anna knew, with a sense of finality, that the real battle was only beginning. The power of the islands had awakened, and with it, the fate of the world hung in the balance. Story 3. The Mysterious Manuscripts of the Maya. In the heart of the dense jungles of Guatemala, a quiet expedition unfolded, shrouded in mystery and danger. Dr. Evelyn White, a renowned historian and Maya scholar, had spent years researching the ancient civilization, piecing together the fragmented history of a once glorious empire. But in all her studies, nothing had prepared her for the strange discovery that awaited her. The journey had started innocuously enough. A routine dig at the ruins of the ancient city of Relaxation, known for its elaborate architecture and stellar alignments. Yet, on this expedition, as Evelyn and her team brushed away the layers of dirt from an ancient structure, they found something far more incredible than they could have imagined. Beneath the crumbling walls of a forgotten temple lay a stone chamber, untouched for centuries. Inside, encased in fragile obsidian, were 3 bound manuscripts, strange, intricate codices unlike anything ever seen before. The glyphs on the pages were unfamiliar, alien even, and appeared to shift when observed under different light. It was clear these manuscripts had not only survived for over 1,000 years, but had been deliberately hidden, perhaps waiting for someone to unlock their secrets. Evelyn felt a shiver run down her spine. The Maya were known for their deep understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and time, but these manuscripts held the promise of something more, a knowledge that, if uncovered, could change everything she knew about the ancient world. Could these manuscripts be the missing link, the ultimate source of Maya wisdom? Her team was skeptical. "You can't be serious," Dr. Mark Reyes, a fellow archaeologist, scoffed. "This could be some kind of hoax. Maya texts don't work like this. These symbols, they look almost like a cipher, not traditional beliefs." But Evelyn, undeterred, knew that she had to pursue the answers. She spent the next few months working with cryptologists, linguists, and Maya scholars from around the world. The more they examined the manuscripts, the more they realized that the glyphs were unlike anything recorded in any known texts. The peculiar patterns suggested the possibility of an encrypted code, one that concealed more than just the language of the Maya. It was as if the codices contained hidden knowledge that had been deliberately obscured from the world. A year passed, and the fragments began to fall into place. The first manuscript, dubbed the Scroll of the Fifth Sun, seemed to describe an ancient prophecy, a vision of an imminent cosmic event that would mark the end of a cycle, an event that had occurred long ago, but was somehow linked to the present day. According to the deciphered text, a celestial alignment of rare magnitude would soon take place, signaling a shift in human consciousness. The second manuscript, the Book of the Jade Serpent, was far more unsettling. It described a hidden force, an ancient deity worshipped by the Maya but erased from their public rituals. The deity, known only as Kawil, was said to possess the power to manipulate time itself. As Evelyn studied the text, she began to believe that the Maya had uncovered a forgotten technology, something capable of bending the fabric of time. The third manuscript, the Codex of the Starborn, was the most cryptic. It was filled with bizarre illustrations of geometric shapes and star maps, intertwined with abstract symbols. At first glance, the Codex seemed to depict an otherworldly journey, perhaps a pilgrimage to a far-off star system. But Evelyn's instincts told her something more, a map of sorts, a map that pointed to a hidden place within the jungle, where an artifact of unimaginable power was buried. As the pieces came together, Evelyn found herself growing increasingly obsessed with the manuscripts. They were not simply relics of the past. They were a key to something far grander, perhaps something that the Maya had known about something beyond their time. But what was it? Was it possible that the Maya had contact with beings from another world? Had they discovered a kind of science so advanced it appeared to be magic? Evelyn soon found herself entangled in a conspiracy far larger than she could have imagined. As she continued her research, her life began to spiral out of control. Strange occurrences began to plague her. Visions of ancient cities, cryptic dreams of serpents and stars, and a feeling that someone or something was watching her every move. She had always believed that the past held the key to the future, but now, it seemed, the past was reaching out to her in ways she couldn't explain. One evening, while working alone in her lab, Evelyn received an anonymous message, a warning. You are not the first to seek the codices. Others have tried, and they have vanished. The knowledge contained within them is not meant for mortals. Terrified, Evelyn began to question her every decision. Was this some kind of warning, or was it a trap set by someone who knew of the manuscripts? She couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that the secrets of the Maya had been hidden for a reason, that there were forces beyond human understanding protecting these ancient texts. But as the days passed and the celestial alignment approached, Evelyn couldn't stop herself from diving deeper into the mystery. There was a place hidden in the jungles, a location marked in the Codex of the Starborn. It was time to go there, to see for herself what secrets lay buried beneath the earth. She gathered a small team of trusted colleagues and ventured deep into the dense Guatemalan jungle, following the map in the Codex. They encountered strange phenomena along the way. Unexplainable sounds, eerie shadows, and moments when the air itself seemed to warp. It was as if they were being guided, or perhaps led into a trap. When they finally arrived at the location described in the Codex, they found a vast stone structure, half buried and overtaken by the jungle. The structure appeared to be a temple, though its architecture was unlike anything the Maya had ever built. Strange, glowing symbols adorned the walls, and in the center of the temple lay a massive, intricately carved stone tablet. It resembled an altar of sorts, but at its center was a perfect circle, empty, waiting. Evelyn stepped forward, her heart pounding. The air around her seemed to hum with energy, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. As she placed her hands on the stone, the earth trembled slightly, and the sky overhead seemed to darken. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet shifted, and an ancient mechanism clicked into place. A hidden passageway opened before them, revealing a cavern deep beneath the temple. The Codex had led them here, but as they descended into the dark, Evelyn couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. What would they find below? And would they ever be able to escape once the secrets of the Maya were revealed? The air grew colder as Evelyn and her team descended into the depths of the temple. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the very earth beneath them was holding its breath. The passage was narrow and winding, lit only by their torches, casting long, flickering shadows on the stone walls. Strange markings, the same symbols found in the Codex of the Starborn, adorned every surface, glowing faintly in the dim light. "Do you see this?" Mark whispered, his voice thick with awe. His eyes were wide as he traced the symbols along the walls with his fingers. "They're the same as the codices," Evelyn murmured, feeling a shiver run down her spine. The glyphs seemed to pulse, as if alive, responding to their presence. She felt an undeniable connection to the ancient civilization that had created them, as though they had been waiting for someone to uncover their truths. The passageway led to a large, circular chamber, its stone floor covered in dust and debris. At the center stood a massive, stone obelisk, its surface covered in intricate carvings and strange, unfamiliar symbols. It was unlike anything Evelyn had ever seen in Maya ruins, and her heart raced as she approached it. "What is it?" Mark asked, his voice low and reverent. Evelyn ran her fingers over the carvings, her mind racing to connect the symbols with what she had read in the manuscripts. Suddenly, one symbol caught her eye, an image of a serpent, its coils wrapping around a star, almost identical to the depiction in the Book of the Jade Serpent. It was the same serpent god, Kawil, but this time there was something else, a subtle, yet unmistakable image of an eye, watching them. A sudden realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. This isn't just a temple, it's a machine, a mechanism, an artifact from a lost civilization. Mark looked at her, his brow furrowed. What do you mean? Evelyn took a deep breath. I think the Maya didn't just understand the stars. They were trying to communicate with something beyond this world. The codices, the symbols, everything we've uncovered, it's all part of a map. A map that leads to something more than just a physical location. It's leading us to a key to unlock something that's been hidden here for millennia. Her voice trembled with both excitement and fear. If she was right, this could change everything they knew about history. But at what cost? The room seemed to grow colder, the air thickening with an unnatural presence. As the team studied the obelisk, they noticed something even more unsettling. Deep cracks had appeared on its surface, as though it had been dormant for centuries, waiting for something to activate it. Slowly, one of the cracks began to widen, revealing a glowing, golden light seeping from within the stone. "Get back!" Evelyn shouted, her instincts kicking in. She grabbed Mark's arm and pulled him away from the obelisk just as the light grew brighter. A soft hum filled the air, resonating through the stone. The ground trembled, and the team staggered as the very chamber seemed to come to life, the symbols on the walls shifting and swirling as though they were alive. Then, from the cracks in the obelisk, a thin beam of light shot upward, illuminating the ceiling. The beam expanded, creating a glowing vortex in the center of the chamber. Evelyn's heart raced. This wasn't just an ancient artifact, it was a doorway, a portal. This isn't just a temple. It's a device, she whispered. A portal to something else, a place beyond our understanding. As she stepped closer, a voice echoed through her mind, clear and ancient. Only the chosen may pass through. Only the worthy shall enter the light of the stars. The words sent a chill through her, but also a surge of excitement. This was what the codices had been leading to. The Maya hadn't just known about the stars. They had discovered a way to travel to them. They had unlocked a technology that allowed them to transcend space and time. But why had they hidden it? Why had they left it dormant for so long? "Evelyn, we need to leave," Mark said, his voice shaking. This is too much. We don't know what we're dealing with." But Evelyn's gaze remained fixed on the swirling vortex. "I can't leave," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and longing. "I have to know what's on the other side." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the chamber, followed by a deep, rumbling growl. From the shadows of the cavern, dark figures began to emerge. Tall, cloaked beings with glowing eyes, their movements jerky and unnatural. They seemed to glide toward the group, as if controlled by some unseen force. Mark stepped back, pulling out a flare gun from his backpack. "Get ready, Evelyn. We don't know who or what these are." Evelyn's mind raced. The codices had warned her. The knowledge contained in these ancient texts was powerful, but it was also dangerous. And these beings, they weren't human. One of the figures stepped forward, its eyes locking on Evelyn with an unsettling intensity. It spoke, but its voice was not in any language she recognized. Instead, the words seemed to resonate directly in her mind. "You have awoken us." The voice was both beautiful and terrifying, filled with an ancient, otherworldly power. Evelyn felt herself being pulled toward the figure, as if some magnetic force was drawing her in. "Evelyn, no!" Mark shouted, reaching out for her, but it was too late. The figure extended its hand, and Evelyn felt a surge of energy pass through her body. Images flooded her mind, visions of stars, galaxies, and ancient civilizations, their technologies and wisdom stretching across the universe. She saw the Maya, no, not the Maya, but the Starborn, the true creators of the codices, beings who had once lived among the stars and visited Earth in ancient times. The Maya had been their disciples, trying to preserve their knowledge for generations. The Starborn were not gods. They were travelers, explorers of the cosmos, who had gifted the Maya with the means to unlock the secrets of time and space. But something had gone wrong. The Starborn had vanished long ago, and their technology, too advanced for human minds, had been sealed away. Now, after centuries of waiting, it was Evelyn's turn to unlock the final piece of the puzzle. The figure spoke again, its voice deep and resonant. "You are the chosen one. The path is clear. The time has come to fulfill the prophecy." Evelyn's mind reeled as the flood of information continued, but she could no longer control it. The knowledge was overwhelming, and she felt herself losing grip on reality. The vision of the swirling vortex before her intensified until it filled her entire consciousness. And then, just as the figure's hand reached toward her, everything went black. Evelyn's mind swirled in darkness, the visions and voices slowly fading into a profound silence. For what felt like an eternity, she drifted, disconnected from the world around her, adrift in the void between consciousness and unconsciousness. Then, suddenly, light pierced through the abyss, sharp and cold like a dagger. She gasped, eyes snapping open, her body trembling. The first thing she noticed was that she was no longer standing in the stone chamber beneath the temple. Instead, she was lying on her back, surrounded by an expanse of brilliant stars and an inky, infinite void. The air felt alien, thin and unnaturally still. She tried to move, but her limbs felt weighted, heavy, as though they were no longer her own. "Evelyn," a voice called out, familiar but distant. Mark's voice. She tried to speak, but the words refused to form on her tongue. She attempted to sit up, but her body resisted, as though bound by unseen forces. Her gaze shifted upward, and for the first time, she saw it, a vast, spherical structure floating in space, glowing with an ethereal blue light. It seemed to hum with power, the energy emanating from it like a pulse. It looked ancient, older than any human civilization, older than Earth itself. But it was undeniably a construct, not a natural phenomenon. A colossal machine, a beacon of forgotten knowledge. The voice spoke again, but this time it was not Mark's. It was one of the Starborn. "You have entered the Nexus, the final gate." The words reverberated through her mind, and the moment they did, the weight on her limbs lifted. Evelyn gasped and sat up, her senses returning with startling clarity. She was no longer tethered to her physical form. The shift was overwhelming, the sense of lightness, the vastness of her surroundings. The space around her felt both infinite and suffocating. In front of her, the glowing structure, the Nexus, seemed to pulse, its surface covered with the same geometric symbols she had seen in the codices, symbols that now appeared to dance and shift before her eyes, as though they were alive. This is the heart of their knowledge. The Starborn's gift to the Maya. You were their last hope. The Maya chose to keep their secret safe. But now, the time has come to open the door again. A surge of energy rippled through her body, and Evelyn's vision blurred. She saw images of ancient cities, their pyramids soaring against the backdrop of alien skies. She saw the Starborn, their faces unlike any human, their bodies ethereal and radiant. They were not gods, but something else entirely. Beings who had traveled across the cosmos, spreading knowledge, sharing their advanced technologies with civilizations like the Maya. But their gift had been misunderstood, their purpose misinterpreted. The Starborn were no longer here, their legacy scattered across the stars. You have unlocked the gateway, but you are not yet ready. To understand the gift of the Starborn, you must first make a choice. Evelyn's heart raced. A choice? What was the choice? She felt herself drawn toward the Nexus, toward the pulse of its light. As she stepped closer, the space around her seemed to dissolve. Her mind was flooded with conflicting emotions, fear, wonder, and an unyielding curiosity. Before she could step forward, the image of the Starborn figure from the temple appeared before her, its glowing eyes fixed upon her with an otherworldly intensity. The figure was taller than any human, with its limbs elongated and graceful. Its skin shimmered, translucent like light itself. The knowledge you seek comes with a price. It spoke, its voice both soothing and chilling. The Maya understood this. They hid the most dangerous aspects of the Starborn's gifts to protect their people. You will not be the same after this. Will you accept the power, the truth, or turn away. Evelyn's breath hitched. Power. Truth. What did that even mean? Her mind raced through the possibilities. The knowledge, the technology, the understanding of the universe that could come from the Starborn's legacy. It could change the course of human history. It could save humanity or destroy it. But what would it mean for her? What was the cost of such power? Before she could speak, the figure reached out, its hands stretching toward her. The energy surrounding it intensified, and the symbols that had danced before her eyes now coalesced, forming a pattern, a perfect, unbroken circle that seemed to draw her in. You will be the bridge. You will carry the knowledge forward. But understand this. Once you step through the Nexus, you cannot return. The door will close, and the path will be forever altered. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Was she ready? Was humanity ready? In that moment, she thought of Mark, of her team, of the world that lay beyond this threshold. What if the knowledge of the Starborn was too much for them to comprehend? What if it tore humanity apart instead of saving it? But then, she thought of the Maya, their civilizations lost to time, their wisdom buried under centuries of silence. Could she really turn away from the legacy they had protected so fiercely? A choice. The weight of it pressed down on her chest. She had to decide. With trembling hands, she stepped forward. As she did, the world around her shattered, fragments of reality breaking apart like glass, leaving only the bright, pulsing light of the Nexus. Her body felt light as air, and a voice called out to her once again. The time is now, Evelyn. The stars have spoken. You are the key to awakening the knowledge of the Starborn. And in that moment, Evelyn felt her mind expand. Her senses stretched beyond the limits of the human experience. The stars, the galaxies, and the infinite stretches of time flooded her consciousness. She was not just a scholar anymore. She was part of something greater, a cosmic connection that reached far beyond Earth. The Nexus pulsed with energy, and the ground beneath her feet disappeared entirely. She felt herself falling, but it was not fear that gripped her. It was understanding of what had been, what was, and what would come. Evelyn White, chosen bearer of the Starborn's knowledge, passed through the gateway, and the Nexus closed behind her, vanishing into the vastness of space. Evelyn's perception of reality had shattered completely as she stepped through the Nexus. One moment, she was in the heart of an ancient Maya temple, standing before a portal that could reshape the world. And the next, she was somewhere else. She felt weightless, as though her body no longer obeyed the familiar rules of physics. The space around her was a vast expanse of shifting, radiant energy, light bending in strange angles, stars flickering like distant fires, and time itself pulsing in rhythmic waves. The world she knew seemed to have dissolved into nothingness, replaced by something far greater, far more ancient. She was no longer in the body she once knew. Her senses were stretched beyond any human experience, her thoughts becoming something more like vibrations of pure energy. It was as if she had transcended the very limits of mortality, now existing in a form that defied description. She couldn't feel her hands, her feet. There were no boundaries, no limits. She was one with the universe, yet she was still herself. "Welcome, Evelyn," a voice said softly, but it was not just a voice. It was the hum of the stars, the language of the cosmos itself. You have chosen the path of enlightenment, the path of knowledge. You have unlocked the gateway, and now you must learn what lies beyond. The voice surrounded her, filled her, resonating deep in her consciousness. It was the Starborn, the ancient beings who had once traveled the stars and shared their secrets with the Maya. She had felt their presence when she was in the temple, but now she was enveloped in it completely. "You are the bridge now," the voice continued. "You are the conduit between your world and the one we left behind. The knowledge you seek is vast. It will be a part of you, and it will change you." Evelyn felt a surge of information, too much to process all at once. It came like an overwhelming tide. Memories not her own, visions of stars and galaxies long forgotten, the blueprints of technologies that defied her understanding. The Starborn had visited countless worlds, seeded knowledge throughout the universe, and now she was one of them. touched by their wisdom. And yet, with this gift came a weight, a burden. The knowledge she had unlocked was not simply a tool. It was power. Power to shape the course of history, but also power to destroy. She tried to focus, to calm her racing thoughts. There was one thing she had to understand. What was the true purpose of the Starborn's gift to humanity? As though answering her unspoken question, the energy around her shifted. A new vision unfolded before her, a vast city, unlike any she had ever seen. It was a metropolis of unimaginable scale, its buildings towering into the heavens, its streets alive with the energy of millions of beings. It was a place of creation, of advancement, but also of decay. The Starborn had once lived here, their civilization reaching its zenith. But like all great civilizations, they had fallen. This was our home, the voice and tone, before we spread across the stars, before we gifted our knowledge to the ancient worlds, before we disappeared. Evelyn saw the ruins of the city, now silent and desolate, the remnants of a once thriving culture. It had been a civilization that touched every corner of the galaxy. Its reach, its influence, far greater than any human empire could imagine. And then, like the Maya before them, they had vanished, their knowledge scattered across the stars. The connection between the Starborn and the Maya was clearer now than ever before. The Maya had been more than just students of the stars. They had been the keepers of this ancient wisdom. They had understood the Starborn's knowledge, preserved it, and hidden it away for millennia, waiting for the time when humanity could handle the power it held. And now, that time had come. You are the next step in the cycle, the voice continued. You will carry the knowledge forward. But be warned, the knowledge we gave to the Maya was too much for them. They hid it away, knowing it would bring destruction if misused. You must tread carefully, Evelyn. The balance must be maintained. The warning echoed in her mind. Too much for them, she thought, the weight of it pressing down on her chest. The Maya had hidden the knowledge of the Starborn for a reason, and yet here she was, standing at the precipice of unlocking its full potential. Could humanity truly handle it, or would it fall prey to the same fate as the civilizations that came before? A new vision appeared, and this time, it was not a city. It was a single object, an artifact, ancient and powerful, unlike anything she had ever seen. It was a sphere, glowing with a pulsating light, inscribed with the same symbols that had been in the codices, the markings she had painstakingly deciphered. It was not just a symbol. It was the key to unlocking the Starborn's technology. The sphere seemed to vibrate in her mind, calling to her, urging her to reach out and claim it. But there was something deeply unsettling about it. She could feel its power, its potential for both creation and destruction, and the warnings that echoed in her mind grew louder. The sphere is the heart of our knowledge, the voice said. It contains the final piece of the puzzle, but it is not meant to be wielded by those unprepared. Will you take it, Evelyn? Will you carry the burden of its power? Her pulse raced. The sphere could unlock the Starborn's full potential, could bring humanity to new heights. But at what cost? The power to control time and space, to manipulate the very fabric of reality, was not something to be taken lightly. She hesitated. Was she truly ready to wield such power? Was anyone? The light surrounding her began to dim, and she found herself standing once again in the heart of the Nexus, her body returning to its physical form. The space around her grew more solid, and the shimmering stars receded into the background. Before her stood the sphere, now materialized in the chamber before her. Its surface gleamed with an otherworldly light, and it seemed to pulse with life, waiting for her to make her choice. You have come this far, Evelyn, the voice whispered, but the choice is yours. Take the sphere, and you will unlock the ultimate knowledge of the Starborn. But know this, once you take it, there is no turning back. The fate of your world, of all worlds, will rest in your hands. Evelyn stared at the sphere, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Her mind raced as she thought of the consequences, the responsibility that would come with such power. Could she really be the one to carry the knowledge of the stars? Was she capable of guiding humanity with the wisdom of the Ancient Ones? Or would she, too, fall victim to the same forces of destruction that had claimed the Starborn, the Maya, and countless others? With a deep breath, Evelyn stepped forward, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the future of everything, humanity, the Starborn's legacy, and the very fabric of existence, now rested in her hands. And with that, she reached out, her fingers brushing the surface of the sphere. Evelyn's fingers touched the surface of the sphere, and the world around her seemed to collapse in on itself. The moment her skin made contact with the glowing orb, a powerful surge of energy shot through her body. It was like a lightning bolt had struck her to the core, sending a shockwave of knowledge, power, and sensation flooding through every fiber of her being. For a brief moment, there was nothing. No sound, no light, no physical sensation. Only an endless void, stretching in every direction. And then, like an explosion, images, symbols, sounds, and sensations overwhelmed her senses. She was no longer Evelyn White, the scholar or archaeologist. She was something else, a part of something ancient, cosmic, and far beyond her human understanding. The visions came in waves, first of stars, constellations, galaxies spinning in an eternal dance. She saw civilizations, both human and alien, rise and fall across the eons. The Maya were only one of many, a footnote in a much larger story, but their knowledge had been passed down to her, a conduit of the Starborn's wisdom. She felt the echo of their lost world, the power they had once harnessed, and the mistakes they had made. "You are the chosen one," a voice whispered within her mind. It was not the Starborn's voice, nor was it familiar to her. It was older, deeper, ancient beyond words. "You have awakened the sphere. You have embraced the knowledge. Now, you must decide how to use it." Her thoughts raced. She had seen the consequences of wielding such power. Civilizations destroyed, minds shattered, and worlds lost. The Starborn had been both creators and destroyers. They had left behind their legacy to be found, yet they had also buried it, hidden it away from those who might misuse it. They had scattered their knowledge across the stars, hoping that one day a worthy being would come to understand it. But Evelyn was no mere scholar. She was the bridge between the past and the future, between the ancient, forgotten knowledge of the Starborn and the world she had known. And with that power came an unimaginable responsibility. The visions began to slow, the barrage of information settling into something more tangible. She saw herself standing in front of a great, illuminated map, a cosmic blueprint of the universe, marked with stars, planets, and pathways that stretched across space and time. The paths were drawn in lines of light, and in the center, there was a single bright star, a point of convergence, a destination. She reached out to touch the map, and as her hand made contact, a wave of understanding washed over her. This was the Starborn's gift. This map was not merely a map of the stars. It was a map of time, of interdimensional gateways of the future and the past intertwined. It was a guide to travel through time and space, to change history, to bend reality itself. But with it came the ultimate question: should she use it? "The time has come," the voice said once again. "The knowledge you hold can change the fate of all things. You may rewrite history, reshape the future, or leave it as it is. But understand this: no choice is without consequence." Evelyn's heart pounded. She understood now. The Starborn's power was not just about knowledge or technology. It was about choice. She could change the world, or she could destroy it. She could bring enlightenment or plunge humanity into chaos. The responsibility was too great for anyone, but it was hers now. The Maya chose to hide this power, the voice continued. They understood that humanity was not ready. But you are different. You are the one who will decide if the knowledge should be shared or sealed away once again. The vision shifted once more, and this time Evelyn found herself standing in a darkened room, surrounded by the codices. The pages, illuminated by an ethereal light, seemed to call to her, offering themselves for the final interpretation. She could see the glyphs more clearly now, the hidden meanings revealed. They were not just words, they were instructions, encoded pathways leading to the future. But as she looked closer, something else caught her eye. A symbol, strange and unsettling, was etched into the margins of one of the codices. It was the image of a serpent coiled around a star, but it had changed. The serpent's eyes now glowed with a fierce, red light, and the star at its center seemed to pulse with a dark energy. It was a warning. Evelyn's pulse quickened as she studied the symbol. The serpent had always represented Kawil, the god of time, a deity who had been worshipped by the Maya. But this symbol, this new form of the serpent, with its glowing eyes and dark energy, was something else. It was as if the power of the Starborn was no longer just a gift. It was a curse, a force that could corrupt, consume, and destroy. Her mind reeled. Could she trust herself with this knowledge? Could anyone? The power to shape history, to rewrite the past, was intoxicating. She could end wars, prevent disasters, and ensure a peaceful future. Or she could reshape the world in ways she couldn't yet comprehend, twist reality itself into something unrecognizable. The serpent watches, the voice whispered. It waits for the one who will choose. Will you embrace the power, or will you lock it away? Evelyn's hand trembled as she reached out once more, this time not for the map of the universe, but for the codices, their pages now glowing with an energy that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. As her fingers brushed the edges of the manuscript, a final vision unfolded before her eyes. She saw a future of her making. It was a world where humanity had achieved peace and prosperity, where the knowledge of the Starborn had been used to advance civilization beyond anything she had ever imagined. But there were shadows too, lurking at the edges of the vision, whispers of something darker, something hidden. A choice had been made, and Evelyn knew then that the consequences of that choice would play out in ways she couldn't yet understand. And then, just as the vision began to fade, the voice spoke one final time. The Nexus awaits, Evelyn. The world is in your hands. Choose wisely. The light around her began to dim, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like an anchor. Evelyn took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest, and made her choice. But the choice was not easy. As she reached out once again, this time to close the codices, to seal the knowledge away, something shifted inside her. The serpent's eyes flashed once more, and the dark energy in the codices seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was not a simple decision, and perhaps it never could be. The moment Evelyn touched the codices, a surge of energy rippled through her, overwhelming her senses. Her body was no longer her own. She felt as though she were merging with the very fabric of the universe. Time, space, and reality itself bending to her will. The codices pulsed with life in her hands, glowing brighter, their ancient glyphs dancing and shifting, revealing their final, hidden secrets. But even as the knowledge poured into her, Evelyn's mind could not escape the looming shadow of the choice she had made. The serpent's eyes glowed in her thoughts, a constant reminder that power, once embraced, could not easily be controlled. The Starborn had warned her. The Maya had hidden this power for a reason, and now she was holding it in her hands. The air around her grew colder, the swirling energy of the codices becoming almost suffocating. It was as if the very room was alive, watching her, waiting for her next move. The universe had unfolded in front of her, but now it was up to her to decide which path to take. Evelyn closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the codices in her hands, and with it, the weight of the universe itself. She had unlocked the knowledge of the Starborn, but she could feel the pull of something darker, something more dangerous. The serpent, the symbol of Kawil, had never just been a symbol of time and wisdom. It had been a guardian of the knowledge that could reshape the world, for better or for worse. She had seen what could be achieved with this power, a future where humanity reached its true potential, where war, disease, and suffering were nothing but distant memories. A future where the world lived in harmony, guided by the wisdom of the Starborn. But she had also seen the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. A future where the power was misused, where civilizations fell, and the very fabric of time was torn apart. Her thoughts were interrupted by the low hum of the sphere, now resting in the center of the room. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat, each thrum growing louder, more insistent. It was calling to her. The power was there for the taking, waiting for her to make the final decision. The choice was hers alone. Mark, Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. She had been so consumed by the power of the codices, the weight of her decision, that she had almost forgotten about the people who had followed her into this journey. They had trusted her. They had risked everything for this discovery, and now it was her turn to lead them. She had to make the right choice, not just for herself, but for them, for the world. Mark's voice echoed from the entrance of the chamber, shaky but resolute. Evelyn, you don't have to do this alone. She turned toward him, her heart heavy. Mark had been her partner throughout this entire journey, through every dig, every discovery, every theory and hypothesis. He was the voice of reason, the skeptic who had kept her grounded when things seemed too impossible to believe. But now, they were standing on the precipice of something unimaginable, and he couldn't fully understand the depth of the power she held. You're right, Evelyn replied softly. I don't. But the power in my hands. It's not something I can share. That Evelyn's words hung in the air, heavy with the unspoken truth that Mark could never fully grasp the gravity of what she was facing. The knowledge in her hands was more than just information. It was the key to reshaping not only their world, but every world, every dimension connected through the Nexus. A power like that was not to be shared. It could not be divided or trusted to anyone else. It was hers to control, or to guard if she chose to. Mark stepped forward, his brow furrowed in concern, the flickering light from the codices casting long shadows across his face. Evelyn, whatever this is, you don't have to carry it alone. I don't know exactly what you've seen, but I can see it in your eyes. You're not the same anymore. You can't let this power consume you. Evelyn's heart ached at the truth of his words. She could feel it, the weight of the power pressing down on her mind, the knowledge and vision spiraling, threatening to engulf her. But she could also feel the infinite potential within her, the sense of purpose she had never known before. The Starborn had chosen her. She was the bridge to the future, the one who could bring their wisdom back into the world. Yet with that choice came responsibility, an unbearable responsibility. I know, Mark, she whispered, but the truth is, I'm not sure I have a choice anymore. This is bigger than us. The fate of the world depends on what I do next. Mark's eyes softened, and he stepped closer, reaching out as if to take her hand. But Evelyn, you've always believed that knowledge should be shared. The world can't handle this alone. You can't carry it all. You're not meant to. She looked at him, the pull of the codices of the sphere, growing stronger with every passing second. Mark was right in some ways. Sharing the knowledge, the power, was the most humane choice. It would ease the burden, allow humanity as a whole to grow and learn from it, to guide the future as a collective, not through a single, flawed individual. But Evelyn knew the truth now. The Starborn had given the knowledge to the Maya, and the Maya had hidden it because they understood one thing. Too much power in the hands of many would cause chaos. Humanity wasn't ready. It had never been ready. She wasn't sure they would ever be. The time is now. The voice of the Starborn echoed in her mind. The door is open. The knowledge is yours to wield. But remember, the serpent watches. It waits for those who will misuse the power. Her hand trembled as she reached for the sphere once more, its light pulsing with an intensity that was almost unbearable. She could feel the weight of it, its power urging her to take it, to step fully into her role as the bearer of the Starborn's legacy. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for her decision. Mark's voice broke through the haze of her thoughts, full of concern. Evelyn, don't do it. Please. Whatever happens, we can find another way. We can help the world together. This doesn't have to be your burden alone. Evelyn turned to look at him, her heart breaking at the sight of his pleading eyes. Mark had always been there for her, in ways she could never truly repay. He had been her confidant, her colleague, her friend. But this was something he could never fully understand. And it wasn't fair to drag him deeper into this decision, into this fate that she alone had to face. "I've seen the future, Mark," Evelyn said quietly, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling within her. "I've seen what we can become, but I've also seen what we could lose. The knowledge I carry, it's not just about the future. It's about the past too. The Starborn gave this to the Maya because they knew the world wasn't ready. And I can't let it fall into the wrong hands. Not even yours." Mark's expression faltered, but he didn't argue. Instead, he simply nodded, his eyes filled with sadness and understanding. He knew, deep down, that this was something Evelyn had to do on her own. She turned back to the codices and, with a deep breath, placed the sphere in the center of the ancient manuscript. The light that emanated from it was blinding, an eruption of power that cascaded around her in waves, swirling through the room like a storm. For a moment, everything went still, and then the walls of the chamber seemed to dissolve, and Evelyn felt herself being pulled into the very heart of the Nexus. Time itself bent and twisted around her, stars whirling in every direction. She saw the threads of reality stretching outward, like the intricate patterns of a web, and at the center, she stood, suspended between the past and the future, between all the possibilities that could unfold from this moment. She was no longer Evelyn White, the archaeologist. She was something more, something ancient. She was the conduit, the vessel for the Starborn's knowledge. But the serpent, the guardian of the codices, had not left her. Its glowing eyes stared at her from the depths of the cosmic darkness, a reminder that power could always be corrupted. "You have unlocked the truth," the voice of the Starborn said, softer now, almost reverent. "You have crossed the threshold, but the path ahead is yours to choose." Evelyn stood in the Nexus, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on her. She could feel the infinite possibilities stretching out before her. The knowledge of the stars, the power to shape time, to alter the course of history, it was all within her reach. And yet, in the midst of it all, one question remained. What kind of future would she create? Would she use the power to heal the world, to guide humanity into a new age of enlightenment? Or would she allow the serpent's shadow to take hold, letting ambition and greed taint the gift she had been given? With one final breath, Evelyn closed her eyes and made her choice. The universe, it seemed, held its breath as she stepped forward. Evelyn stepped forward, her mind filled with clarity, but also a haunting sense of responsibility. She could feel the universe itself shifting around her, the cosmic threads of time and space aligning in response to her choice. The swirling energy of the Nexus, the place where past, present, and future converged, seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Her heart beat in rhythm with the pulse of the sphere. The codices had laid bare the path before her, both the gift and the burden of knowledge. The power she now held in her grasp was beyond imagination, yet it was nothing more than a key to unlock potential or unleash destruction. "The path is yours, Evelyn," the voice of the Starborn echoed, a calm and timeless presence. "You hold the knowledge of the universe in your hands. What you do next will determine the fate of all who follow." But the serpent was still there, lurking in the shadows, its eyes glowing with an ominous light. The symbol of Kawil had never been just a warning. It was a reminder that power, if misused, could corrupt. The Maya had hidden this knowledge for a reason. But Evelyn, as the bridge between the worlds, was now the keeper of this dangerous gift. She could guide humanity to greatness, or let it spiral into ruin. The silence stretched on, and Evelyn's thoughts raced. She remembered the images she had seen, a world in harmony, a future of peace and progress where the mistakes of the past were avoided. Yet she also recalled the darker visions, the potential for chaos, for war, for the misuse of the power she now held. There was no guarantee that humanity, in its current state, would rise to the occasion. She couldn't ignore the possibility that some would seek to control the power for their own gain. Mark's words echoed in her mind, urging her to share the knowledge, to find a way for humanity to grow together. But even he didn't understand the weight of what she was carrying. This was no longer just about saving the world. It was about preserving the balance, ensuring that the serpent's shadow never overtook the light. The sphere in the center of the nexus pulsed with energy, growing brighter and more intense. Evelyn reached out, feeling its warmth seep into her very soul. She understood now. She had seen enough of the future, enough of the potential paths that lay ahead, to know what needed to be done. It was not her place to decide the future of humanity. It was her place to protect it, to guide it with wisdom, but never to impose her will upon it. The knowledge of the Starborn was too great, too dangerous to be wielded by one person, or even a small group. If humanity were to rise, it had to rise on its own. She had unlocked the key to the future, but it would have to be used wisely, carefully, and only when the time is right. Evelyn closed her eyes, breathing deeply. She made her choice. It was the only choice. With a final, decisive motion, she reached for the codices and gently, carefully closed them. The glow of the symbols faded as the pages fell silent. She could feel the knowledge still within her, but it was now contained, protected. The serpent's eyes dimmed, no longer watching, no longer waiting. The nexus began to collapse around her, the cosmic energies dissipating like mist before the morning sun. Time and space reassembled themselves into the physical world once more. The stone chamber beneath the ancient temple reappeared, solid and real once again. Evelyn stood alone, the codices in her hands, the sphere now silent beside her. Mark was there, his face etched with worry, but also relief. Evelyn, his voice was soft, as though he wasn't sure what to expect. She looked at him, her heart heavy but calm. It's done. The power is sealed away. We've made the right choice. Mark blinked, unsure of what she meant. He stepped forward, his eyes searching hers for answers. What did you do, Evelyn? What happened? Evelyn took a deep breath, holding the codices close to her chest. She could feel the weight of the knowledge inside, but it no longer consumed her. It was now a part of her, a part of her purpose. I've sealed it away, she said quietly. The Starborn's gift is too powerful for us to handle. Not yet. It has to remain hidden, protected, until humanity is ready. Mark's expression shifted between confusion and awe. But you've unlocked it, Evelyn. Doesn't that mean? It means that the time isn't right, she interrupted softly. The world isn't ready for such power. It's not about sharing it. It's about understanding it, respecting it. One day, maybe, but not yet. Mark didn't say anything for a moment, taking in her words. And then slowly he nodded. I trust you. I trust that you've made the right choice. For a long while, they stood there in the dim light of the chamber, the air heavy with the unspoken understanding between them. The power of the Starborn had been unlocked, but its influence would not be allowed to spread recklessly. The codices were closed, the sphere silent. For now, the world would remain unchanged. But Evelyn knew that one day, the knowledge she had uncovered might once again be needed. As they left the temple and began their journey back through the jungle, Evelyn couldn't help but glance over her shoulder at the ruins. A part of her felt the weight of the decision she had made. She had chosen to protect the world from the knowledge of the Starborn, to keep it sealed away for the time being. But she also knew that the path was not over. The world would change, and when it was ready, the knowledge would find its way to those who could use it wisely. For now, the world was safe, and that was enough. The dense jungle seemed to hum with life as Evelyn and Mark made their way back to the clearing, the air thick with the weight of their decision. The codices, now silent in Evelyn's hands, no longer pulsed with the strange energy that had once consumed her. The knowledge of the Starborn, the universe's secrets, the power to alter time and space. Everything she had unlocked was now contained. The path forward was uncertain, but it was their path to walk, not a path dictated by ancient power. The trek out of the jungle was long, filled with quiet moments as the two of them processed what had just transpired. The sounds of the wilderness filled the air, but neither of them seemed to hear it fully, each lost in thought, haunted by the weight of the knowledge they carried. When they finally reached the edge of the jungle, where their transport was waiting, Mark paused and turned to face Evelyn. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the earth. But there was no mistaking the solemnity in his gaze. "Evelyn, you know what we've done, right?" His voice was heavy, like he was testing the truth of his own words. "The world will never be the same after this. We're keeping something that could change everything, from the way people live to the way they understand themselves. But you're right, the world's not ready. Not yet." Evelyn nodded slowly, feeling a calmness settle inside her as she met his gaze. "I think the hardest part was realizing that sometimes saving the world means knowing when not to use its power." Her voice was steady, though there was a quiet ache beneath it. "We couldn't take that knowledge and let it be used by just anyone. It's too dangerous, and there's always the chance that someone might find it. Someone who isn't ready, or who might want to exploit it." Mark gave her a half smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You did what you thought was right." "I hope so," Evelyn replied softly. "But that's not enough, is it? What if I was wrong?" He didn't answer, but the silence between them was filled with understanding. They had come so far, and in the end, they had chosen to protect the world from itself. The codices, like the ancient civilization that had created them, were hidden once more. But Evelyn knew that the truth they contained could never be fully erased from her mind. She would carry it with her forever. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery oranges and reds, they climbed into their transport, the hum of the engines breaking the stillness. The jungle receded behind them, a green blur in the distance. Evelyn gazed out the window, her thoughts wandering back to the ancient city of Uaxactin, to the codices and the sphere, and to the Starborn, whose legacy still lingered in the recesses of her soul. There was no clear answer to the questions that haunted her. Would humanity ever be ready? Could they ever understand the true nature of the power that had once been shared by the Maya? And what about the serpent, the guardian of the knowledge, still watching from the depths of her mind? The journey was not over. Not for her. Not for the world. Months passed. The excavation of the site was wrapped up, and the media frenzy over their discovery slowly faded as the world moved on to its next distraction. But Evelyn couldn't forget the codices, and neither could Mark. They had returned to their respective research, but the weight of the knowledge they had locked away lingered, a quiet presence in the background of their lives. One day, Evelyn received an unexpected letter. It was postmarked from a distant place, an obscure location she had never heard of. It wasn't addressed to her specifically, just the keeper of the codices. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of parchment, weathered and torn at the edges. She carefully unfolded it, her hands shaking as she read the words written in an ancient script that only she could understand. The knowledge will always find a way. When the stars align, the path will be clear. The serpent waits, watching, waiting for the one who will unlock the door. Evelyn's mind raced. How could someone have known? How had they found her? The codices were sealed away. The power of the Starborn was contained. And yet someone somewhere was aware. Mark's voice interrupted her thoughts. He had entered the room and stood behind her, his eyes narrowing as he saw the letter. "Evelyn, what is it?" Evelyn sat back, the weight of the letter heavy in her hands. She didn't answer immediately, as if giving herself a moment to absorb the implications. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, yet resolute. "The knowledge is never truly gone. It's always there waiting." Mark didn't say anything at first, but the air between them shifted, heavy with the same realization that had been gnawing at both of them. The universe had a way of returning what had been hidden, of pulling the threads of destiny back together. The Starborn had never truly left. They were a part of the fabric of the world now, and the codices, their secrets, would one day find their way to those who sought them. Just as Evelyn had been chosen, others would be. "The serpent is waiting," she murmured to herself, a strange mix of dread and understanding creeping into her voice. The circle was unbroken. Mark nodded slowly, as if accepting the inevitability of what they both knew. "So, we wait." Evelyn looked up at him, her expression unreadable. She had made her choice, and now it was time for others to make theirs. The path forward was uncertain, the future unwritten. But the Starborn's knowledge would always be a part of the world, waiting for the right moment to be revealed again. With a final glance at the letter, Evelyn placed it carefully into the drawer of her desk. The world was not ready yet, but one day it would be. And when the time came, the door would open. Until then, she would wait, and in the quiet, endless depths of time, so would the serpent.